Florabella on my screen. Her smile, it shines so bright. She's a queen with every scene. In the morning or the night, recipes and good vibes flow. Every video a gem. Her confidence, it grows and grows. We're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power. Spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong. With every like and every share, we feel her energy. No storm too strong she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power. Spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Recipes and good vibes flow. Every video a gem. Her confidence, it grows and grows. We're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power. Spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong. Every share, we feel her energy. No storm too strong she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power. Spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong.
Battles got power, Florabella stands tall. Every drip, every drop, watch the haters fall. Channel sharp as thorns, ain't taking no mess. Scroll through her feet, feel that queen's finesse. Vines tangle tight, but Flora breaks free. Roots so deep, can't mess with her tree. From the mud she rises, roses from the dirt. Every comment section she lays down hurt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. From the garden green to the concrete wall, Florabella, unstoppable nature's child. Leaves whisper secrets, she's the loudest shout. From the channel buzzing, she never backs out. Seed of strength, through seasons she grows. In the face of doubt, her spirit glows. Cameras ain't a limit, she branches out. Thorns in her crown, she wears it no doubt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless.
All right. Good evening, people. Good evening. Listen, it is Monday night. I understand what type of day it is. Y'all are getting turned up. It's Labor Day. Nobody really wants to talk about the real regular stuff. But I am here nonetheless. Nonetheless, I have the topic ready to go. I just have a few more things I'm going to iron out and then we'll get into it. Again, this is about the Dark Triad traits. That's what they are. There's not just the Dark Triad, they're actually a set of traits that we're going to talk about today that they all interlink, they intertwine with personality disorders and specifically antisocial personality, which is one of many. All right, so we're going to talk about it and we're going to have a good time while we talk about it. But I'm just going to do a few more things in the background and then we will get going with the song. All right, so let me give you guys some Lofi. Ooh, this Lofi's making me sleepy. Oh, okay, here we go.
Battles got power, Florabella stands tall. Every drip, every drop, watch the haters fall. Channel sharp as thorns, ain't taking no mess. Scroll through her feet, feel that queen's finesse. Vines tangle tight, but Flora breaks free. Roots so deep, can't mess with her tree. From the mud she rises, roses from the dirt. Every comment section she lays down hurt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. From the garden green to the concrete wall, Florabella, unstoppable nature's child. Leaves whisper secrets, she's the loudest shout. From the channel buzzing, she never backs out. Seed of strength, through season she grows. In the face of doubt, her spirit glows. Cameras ain't a limit, she branches out. Thorns in her crown, she wears it no doubt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless.
Florabella on my screen. Her smile, it shines so bright. She's a queen with every scene. In the morning or the night. Recipes and good vibes flow. Every video a gem. Her confidence, it grows and grows. We're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable Flora. She's got that power. Spreading her aura. Blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong. With every like and every share, we feel energy. No storm too strong, she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable flora. She's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Recipes and good vibes flow. Every video a gem. Her confidence it grows and grows. We're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable flora. She's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong. With every like and every share, we feel her energy. No storm too strong, she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable flora. She's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong.
Oh, oh boy. Sorry, guys. Sorry. That is my fault. I am coming in shortly. Just give me a minute. Trying to make sure I have all of my material for tonight ready. So sorry, guys. I'm kind of slinging myself in here at the last minute. Excuse me, in terms of having everything I need. So sorry about that. Let me go to the music. All right, it's low already. Put it down to, I may put Lofi. So I don't even think we need this for tonight. But all right, guys. So the conversation tonight is going to be on the Dark Triad. All right. So the Dark Triad actually ends up that it's actually not just a name for something, it's a set of traits. Okay. So it's a set of particular traits that describe certain characteristics of people with personality disorders. Specifically, they focus on three, and we'll get into those. Hey, TMKC. Hello, Empress. Miss Jalen says the music is gone. Oh yeah, that was for like a quick second. I'm sorry. I'm over here trying to figure out Restream, but I also prefer Restream to StreamYard. So like I actually like how it works. Hey Joshua, how you doing tonight? How are you doing? I'm just here ready to do this topic on the Dark Triad. And hopefully, this can be something that people enjoy, regardless of the fact that it's we're talking about mental health at the end of the day. People have their opinions on that. They obviously believe that we should take better care of mental health, but when the subjects come up, it's usually not a popular thing to talk about. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Um, Let me see. The music is kind of low, but I can't tell. You guys let me know. Am I a good sound, like volume so far? Should I put it up? Put the music down? All right, doing well. All right, great. I'm glad to hear that, Josh. And Team PC says hi. Hello, girly. I'm excited to actually do a topic, like a real topic. So let me get my glasses because I can't, for the life of me, I can't see. The worst is when you can't see anything and you're just like trying to peer at things. All right. Miss Jalen put a one in the chat. Thank you. I'm gonna assume that means you can see, you can hear me. Sounds good. Okay, perfect. Perfect. My webcam has pretty decent audio, but I just wanted to make sure with the background stuff. All right, so as you guys can see, the dark triad is a set of traits. So when I first originally heard of the dark triad, I was just thinking about three different characteristics of a personality, of an individual thing. That's just kind of how it seems presented by the title. But really, the dark triad is a set of three traits that that are exhibited by the most, psychopathic, antisocial, just a very criminal and dark group of people. Um, so these three particular traits, they're not related in that they define one personality disorder, but they are traits of people with personality disorders and similar issues. Hey Royce, what's going on? Oh, you driving? Okay, be careful. Be safe. Definitely appreciate you guys listening in. Make sure you're safe, okay? Because I'm here. I'm not going nowhere. I will be here for most of the evening. But yes, so the dark triad is a set of traits that encompass people with different personality disorders. Machiavellian, as you'll start to realize, is probably the only thing that stands outside of that in terms of definition of traits that are related to personality disorders. All right, so let's get into it and sort of talk about it. I don't want you guys to get bored or think that I'm just here to teach you. This is meant to be a discussion. So if you guys want to add to the discussion, if you have something to say, if you feel like that I'm somehow, you know, using these terminologies inappropriately and that I'm like just assuming that regular people who don't behave how I want to are narcissistic or Machiavellian, like whatever. If you guys have any issues with what I'm saying tonight, feel free to come up and share your opinion with me. The only thing I'm going to ask is that you guys cam up in the back so I know you're a human being. But outside of that, you can come up on the panel and talk. Just try to keep your camera on if you can. If not, just at least try to be engaged in the conversation, not just an avatar taking up space. All right, so today we're going to talk about I'm going to do like a quick introduction. We're going to define all these different terms because at the end of the day, these are three standalone traits. Even narcissistic traits alone don't necessarily mean that you have the personality disorder, but you might exhibit some traits. So we're going to go into all the definitions, and then we're going to talk about how this shows up in relationships, friendships, you know, workplace dynamics and things like that. We're going to pretty much talk about how to be careful that you don't fall victim to these type of people or that you don't interact too much with these type of people. Basically just giving us our overview of what having a friend who has one of the dark triad traits, like what that would really look like, or family members. So we're going to go into a lot of that a little bit later, but we'll start pretty much over here. All right, so what is the dark triad? Dark triad is a cluster of three negative personality traits: Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. The things that they really have in common with each other, because they're not part of one definition, but what they have in common with each other is that they share emotional coldness, duplicity, and aggressiveness, right? These particular traits are common in these different personality characteristics and traits in the general personality umbrella, right? So we'll go into the definitions of all of this, but this was first coined a term in 2002 by some Canadian psychologists. It was Delroy and Paulus and Kevin Williams, and they described these traits as overlapping but being their own distinct things, right? So Machiavellianism is its own trait, narcissism own trait, psychopathy own set of traits, both of them for both that and narcissism, right? So the dark triad isn't just what you describe one person. It's not an individual thing. It's more like a spectrum that overlaps each other that sort of describes a great deal of things. All right, so I'm gonna put up the Britannica definition of it because I just like how they're able to sort of break it down and make it understandable. And like Josh says, make sure you guys like, share, subscribe the video. At the end of the day, I'm here to entertain you guys. Whether you are nerdy like me and you're entertained by shit like this, or you just want to come here and have a regular conversation about something that we probably deal with more in society than we're willing to admit, then please do one of the such. All right. I appreciate you guys coming here. So, Britannica describes it as, like I said, a cluster of those three things. Um, a little some, so I'm gonna read some of this just so you guys get a quick idea of this. I'm not gonna make it too stale, but although some psychologists have questioned the utility of grouping the traits together, suggesting that differences between them might be more than their similarities, most other researchers have continued to rely on the concept. The dark triad is generally considered to be helpful in understanding aversive behaviors in the workplace and broad cultural problems such as prejudice. Right, so these traits can help inform us a little bit of other traits that we could be dealing with people in society. You know, obviously, as people, we have to be patient with each other. There's a lot of different people in the United States of America from different backgrounds. So we sort of understand that we, have to sort of work a little bit harder to get along with each other. But some issues have a more insidious nature and they require us, staying educated about them so that we don't continue, those negative processes. Prejudice being one of them, right? A lot of prejudice exists in the United States, unfortunately, no matter how many different people are here. And so we have to focus on making sure that we don't encourage prejudice and those types of behaviors. Um, but I specifically like that they talk about it's helpful in understanding those behaviors in the workplace too, because at the workplace everybody's gonna have the common goal of making money, succeeding, being doing accomplishing what they need to do not only to secure their future but to further their careers. So it's a pretty neutral place that you would expect people to be competing in, versus the dating market or like to be in popular crowds. People discourage people from wanting to fit in and things like that. Versus in the workplace, I would say that people, it's more so encouraged and it's more common that people will be in competition in that place. All right. So the theory of the dark triad recognizes specific characteristics associated with each personality trait. All right. So the different personalities that we have, I'm going to switch it over back to my presentation. Are obviously the three that we've talked about, but I want to give you guys the clear definitions that I sort of put together for these different traits. All right, so Machiavellianism is more of a manipulation tactic, right? So they're using clever lies and tricks in order to achieve something. So that means they might come within a certain friend group and be a charmer or be whatever it is. Basically, however they're going to treat people is because there's a means to an end, right? So that's why it's so hard and it's difficult to recover from interacting with these types of people, because a lot of times what they do, how they treat you, who they are to you is based off of whatever value they think that you serve for them, right? These are very surface level relationships at the core, but people often are fooled by their charm and think that they've had a genuine relationship. So when they find out that this person was just, friends with them, or just part of their clique because they felt like it could further something from them, those effects can be devastating. All right, so let's pull up this definition from Britannica again. We're focused on sort of the just sort of the baseline definitions, nothing further, nothing below that. And Machiavellianism is pretty much just sort of being clever, right? Try to get one over on people, pretend like you like them, pretend like they're your friends, pretend like you care about their feelings, just being sort of calculated in how you choose to treat those people, right? So you can imagine that a lot of people, after they've served whatever purpose that particular Machiavellian person needed from them, they feel pretty empty, right? They feel used. They feel like an object, because outside of this, the purpose that you can serve for that person, you mean nothing to them. So you might have thought you were building a genuine bond, but they're nothing to you. They're nothing to you. You're nothing to them. Um, at the end of the day, they're not reliable outside of anything that they feel like they need to accomplish, and they don't really care for you. So it's sort of like one of those devastating relationships that you realize that you were sort of used. Like, for example, if you were used for a one night stand, like that's kind of the feeling you get after befriending or being sort of in a friendship with someone that has these Machiavellian traits. They're more focused on what you can do for them, and that's the only purpose that you've ever served for them. All right. So outside of that, of course, we have the narc. And let me pin Josh's message. Thank you, Joshua, for encouraging people to support the content. Right. Obviously, I do my best here to put together presentations that are coherent and that have something to offer to you guys. All right. So Tiny Josh comes and he says, "What are you talking about, Lofa? What's up?" Today I'm talking about dark triad traits, right? We heard people bringing up these topics a little while ago, and when it was being discussed, I felt like, we're not doing this subject justice. So I decided to put together a presentation on that, and obviously I want to have a discussion with people, so I put the link in the chat for anyone who's bold enough to come and talk to me about this, but that's what I'm focusing on tonight. Right, so we finished up with Machiavellian. They're just manipulative. People are a means to an end for them. Everything is about what you can help them accomplish, or what being in contact with you could lead for them. So that's more what that is. All right. So now on to narcissism, which is something that people tend to be afraid to talk about. It's something we talk about a lot more now. But I do believe there is some misappropriation of what it actually means when we discuss narcissism. But narcissism, in as bare as it can be described, is a pathological self absorption. Right. It comes from a need to tiny draws. You ain't never had a wrench. So I don't know why you're trying to act like you have a wrench before, where you can be like, "Where's my wrench?" You never had one. All right, just sit down and enjoy yourself. But yes, narcissism is a pathological self-absorption. These people are really just interested in trying to fulfill their ego, trying to just basically convince themselves that things are, that they're more powerful than they are, that they're more intelligent, more liked, more popular, whatever it is. Um, it's sort of just a delusional grandiosity, which is what they've used in many of these different topics. When I was reading about this to describe it, is really having this bigger idea of who you are, and what you have to offer and things like that. So let me pull up the narcissism definition, because generally when we talk about narcissism, it is under the narcissistic personality disorder umbrella, right? Even though it's an individual trait, and there are many individual traits that people have, um, narcissism is still sort of mainly described under that umbrella. So let me just share my screen real quick. Oh, oops. Actually, I thought we were like family. You're hurting my feelings. I don't know why you would have thought that. I don't know why you would have thought that, buddy. Not gonna lie. Alright, so I'm gonna share my screen now, and we're gonna talk about that. All right. So again, it's described as this pathological self-absorption. It was a mental disorder that was coined by a British doctor, Havelock Ellis, in 1898. So these disorders have been around for quite a long time. Narcissism is characterized by inflated self-image and addiction to fantasy, by an unusual coolness and composure, shaken only when the narcissistic confidence is threatened, and by the tendency to take others for granted or to exploit them. Right? This name comes from a mythological figure, like a lot of things in American modern psychology, who fell in love with his own reflection. According to Sigmund Freud, narcissism is a normal stage in child development, but is considered a disorder when it occurs after puberty. Right? So obviously, as we grow older, there's going to be certain ways that babies and things become socialized, start to understand their role in the world as humans, their function. Let me see. What? Oop, wrong one. And they start to really understand um, their value as children. But after puberty, narcissism starts to display in those kind of problematic behaviors. Sorry. And those problematic ways of treating people. So, in psychology and personality theory, narcissism refers to one element of the so called dark triad, the other two being Machiavellianism and psychopathy. Narcissistic personality disorder is usually diagnosed through clinical evaluation, obviously using the DSM manual, in terms of personality traits of grandiosity and attention seeking, in terms of significant impairments in personal functioning, such as looking excessively to others for the regulation of self esteem, viewing oneself as exceptional, having impaired empathy, and having mostly superficial relationships. So everything that they're doing isn't in regards to trying to affirm their ego, right? They're trying to make themselves feel better, to try to make themselves feel important. And so it makes for really superficial relationships. They're not connecting to people based off of deeper, ingrained traits that they have, or knowledge, or hobby. Like they're not really getting deep with the people that they form bonds with. Those people are serving a purpose as well. So it's not conducive to a real bond. Tiny Draw says, I think those traits are championed in modern society based on current culture. I don't know that they're championed, but I'll say this. I think that um, having self esteem, being confident in oneself, because of the nature of how people have begun treating each other, that there is a lot of us who feel like being cold and callous and not really caring, and just being focused on self, that's sort of somebody being strong. So I will say that in some ways it's being misconstrued as a good thing. Right. Those qualities remain relatively stable over time and are not attributable primarily to a medical condition, the use of drugs, or other individuals' developmental stage. Researchers have also also investigated a less extreme form of narcissism that is called narcissistic personality type. Such individuals possess most or all of the characteristics of the narcissistic personality disorder, but are considered within normal range of personality. So it really is like a really big spectrum. There isn't just a set way of being able to tell that somebody is a narc, or has narc traits, or has narcissistic personality disorder. It really sort of is a spectrum that people fall on different ends of depending on the severity of their symptoms, especially if they're able to function. So let us go back. to the presentation. And sorry, I don't know why it's like pulling up this way. And we were on narcissism. All right, so I'm gonna pull up the other article on that. Give me 1 second. My allergies are kicking my butt as well. So, all right. So, I wanted to give us a chance to look at the actual diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality. I don't want us to just talk about the DSM and what it does. I wanted us to also get a picture of what it looks like. So, let me pull this one out. Mm. And this is specifically from the DSM criteria, what it looks like. There is a lot of ads because I found this online, but we're going to look at sort of how the DSM breaks it all down. Um, hold on. I don't think we push regulating self esteem levels. I think we push them to be inflated to delusional self images which border on fantasy. Now, so Tiny Jaws, well, the problem with this statement is that you're implying that everybody encourages people to have an inflated sense of ego. Now, I will say that I think social media encourages that, but I don't think people in general are encouraging others to be egotistical and grandiose in how they view themselves. You know, we still, regardless of social media, are we know our reality. So if you're not wealthy, six figure, whatever, there's no point in getting online and bashing people who are not wealthy, making six figures, you know, at the top of their career salary. So I think, um, oops, all right, is this, am I stuck? Oh my God, can you guys still see me? See me and hear me? Their career salary. So I think, uh, oops. All right. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to figure out like if my screen was stuck because it was showing, but I think there's a delay on each stream. So okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again because I stopped sharing it for some reason. Replace screen share. Do this. All right, so I wanted to talk about narcissistic personality based off of the DSM as well. So I was able to get some criteria of what it looks like, so you guys sort of know what I'm talking about. Um, let me share. Oh, I don't know why. Let me do this. Share screen. Are you guys seeing this or okay? All right, so now. Let's do this. Okay, perfect. Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out how to keep this going because restream is a little silly once it starts acting up. All right, so basically this is just a quick way of trying to understand the DSM criteria and sort of how it's broken down. But the essential features of personality disorder are impairments in personality, which is self and interpersonal, functioning, and the presence of pathological personality traits. To diagnose NPD, the following criteria must be met according to the DSM. So there has to be impairments in personality functioning. So what they use here to describe that is identity. Let me make this screen bigger. So that would be impairments to self-functioning. If you guys can see that, let me know. Please be more prepared in advance. Thank you, man. You're just talking now. You're just talking. Right. So there's impairments in self-functioning. So there's excessive preference to others for self-definition and self-esteem regulation. Exaggerated appraisal may be inflated or deflated, or facilitate between extremes. Emotional regulation mirrors fluctuations in self-esteem. So the fact that they're constantly looking to other people to affirm them, let them know that they're doing well, let them know that they're um, intelligent, wanted, liked, popular, like just their need to be affirmed from outside of themselves, validated from outside of themselves, is a clear marker of this personality disorder. And as well as another type of impairment in self functioning, they have an impairment with self direction, right? They're not able to set goals because they're always looking for others to approve what they're doing. Right? They're always setting themselves to super high standards because they want to be liked. They want people to like what it is that they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish, and so they're putting a lot of value in what other people feel about them. And that could be a tough situation because people what people feel about you can change with the wind, right? You shouldn't put your eggs in that basket. You should focus on what it is that you feel that you can offer, and go from there, right? But unfortunately, people with this impairment, they have an issue with their direction that comes from within. They seem to seek direction from outside of themselves, which makes it difficult. So they also have impairments in interpersonal functioning. So they have an impaired ability to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. This is where that coldness comes in with a um, with a uh, with a narcissist. They lack empathy. They're unable to relate to what people are going through, or they're unable to be introspective about other people's feelings. And this makes it very hard to deal with, right? Have you ever talked to somebody and you're just spilling your guts, and they're just like, uh-huh, and the look on their face lets you know that they don't really understand where you're coming from, right? They're trying to listen, they're trying to be attentive, but they can't really understand why you feel the way you do. They don't understand your interaction or anything like that. For them, it's just, okay, I'm sitting here listening, but I don't really get why you're upset, or whatever it is that you're sort of feeling. And a person that lacks empathy is very hard to relate to. So they're excessively attuned to reactions of others, but only if perceived as relevant to self. So they don't really care what people are talking about unless people are talking about them, right? So they might never acknowledge certain people or certain groups, but if those people start gossiping about them, or even saying good things about them, suddenly they're super attuned to them. They care what their opinions are. They want to make space for them to be heard because it relates to something that's important to them, right? So narcissistic people are sort of, they're very hard to relate to. So they over and underestimate their own effect on others. They perceive themselves to be more relevant, right? They think that what they feel and think is more important to people because they have this very inflated sense of self, right? They think they're this super popular social figure, but they're just any old person in whatever environment that they're at, right? People don't really care if they like them, or they don't really care what that person has going on. But in their head, the inflated person, they think that people look at them as like a social beacon. That's sort of what you kind of would see with sometimes these type of people. All right. So they also have an issue. They have issues with intimacy, right? That's what makes their interpersonal relationships so hard to maintain, because there's never a level of intimacy that would bond them to people. They're just sort of dealing with people on a surface level. So once those people stop serving them, they don't really talk to them anymore. That is just the narc. They don't really care for them. All right. So the pathological traits that they have are antagonism, right? So they feel that grandiosity, they feel entitled, they are very condescending towards people because they certainly just view themselves as better than everybody, right? They hold the belief that one is better than others. They truly think that they are better than everybody. They're like, I'm that guy, you ain't nothing, I'm something, right? they really have this inflated sense of self. They think that they're big and bad, right? They think they're big and bad. So let's take a bandit break, and we're going to talk about a bandit who he definitely displays inflated ego and inflated sense of self when he comes on YouTube and he talks about his accomplishments and things like that. So let's hear this bandit who actually ends up getting very aggressive with a woman talk about himself in this context and sort of what makes this altercation blow up. All right, let's hear it.
You want people to know, you are wanting to let somebody know I tried to fuck you. This is stupid.
Because I just fucked him on OnlyFans. I didn't want to fuck you.
Is your weed that tight today, man? Is the glue fucking with you?
Niggas paid me. Do you hear me?
This bitch is drunk and acting stupid.
I'm not drunk. I'm dead ass not
You
drunk.
dead ass drunk and
I'm not
stupid.
drunk. I promise to God.
That weed too tight and you need a different kind of
God
glue.
knows I'm not drunk right
Chris,
now. God
Dumb
knows.
son of a bitch. Just up here just being ignorant for no reason.
No. He not finna try to play me.
Who's playing you, stupid bitch?
No, bitch, you fucking stupid.
Nobody's playing you, cat shoot that.
He really tried to fight a girl though. He out of pocket.
All right, so let me. I'm sorry, that was off. That was off topic. But the bandit, he just reminded me of that self-entitled. Like he really like Tammy Sotomayor. Really, he believes himself to be this social media mogul. That he's so important. His opinions are so fly. He's just a very intelligent guy. He's just a low vibrational bandit. But he's one of those bandits that will go around YouTube just being a bussy. And as you can see, he went from talking about himself to he clearly offended that woman by insinuating that he has some type of relationship with her. And then he decided to try and fight her. All right. So these are the type of bandits that we sort of see around here, trying to act like they're above and beyond the women that they interact with. But, I thought that was just a nice little breakup of some of the material. This is definitely, if you're just like not a learning person, this is very dry material. Jayla says, not crispy. Yes, that was crispy. Crispy is a very egotistical, grandiose individual. He actually thinks that he's more important than he is. So I'm actually gonna give you guys another example of that. But just I'm gonna give you guys another example of him, just in him talking, because he starts talking and he thinks he's that guy. Let me just. Because there's some bandits on here who deride him, but if we actually listen to the bandit, he says a lot of really truly disturbing things about women, Black women specifically, Black people in general, and he's still sort of regarded. But what he says is not racist, sexist, whatever it is you think it is, right? Colorist, right? Oh boy, that man has polluted the internet. Yes, he has. So that woman became physical first, and now she's a victim. He's big. He was ready to start swinging. That is crazy. Yeah, because Crispy is a big Black bandit. Okay, I'm not trying to be racist. He is a big Black bandit. So let's hear some of his rants. I like to think of Tommy Sotomayor as being extremely grandiose, right? His beliefs about who he is to YouTube and what he actually has to offer are dramatically different to what he actually is. But let's hear the bandit talk because we got time today.
The Moist Twatkins. Moist Twatkins, are you in the building? Didn't you say that there were only a sliver of Black women who do the things I talk about? Well, Dr. Moist Twatkins, wouldn't you be able to then say Tommy would run out of material, correctly? Right, sir. Wouldn't that what happen? Like if we want to say there's only a sliver of racism in America, then you wouldn't be able to do a show every day where you could talk about 10 different incidences of racism in America, now could you? But you claim there's only a sliver of black women who do stuff like, beat up an Applebee's waitress, stab the Applebee's waitress, rob the Applebee's waitress, then waddle your fat ass out like ain't nothing happened. Oh, you didn't see this, Dr. Moist Twatkins? Well, let me do you a favor and break some news, nickel.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to
Just this. Henry County, Georgia. 4 black hair-hatted hoes. 4 black ugly bitches.
And now this is where I have to come in and provide some relief for the Dusty Bandit speaking right now, right? Imagine this ugly, black, crispy, dirty, dusty, broken peen bandit, right? Being able to get online, talk about black women, call them hair-hatted hooligans, think that any news that he has to provide to the internet is beneficial, right? He really truly thinks he's important as he's sitting there wearing a size medium floral t-shirt with a hat that doesn't even remotely match. I mean, he's just as dusty as they come, but somehow he thinks that what he feels about these black women is so important, that he's a beacon of the community. He's able to actually speak on black women and what they do in a detrimental way, looking the way he does, right? So he's gonna obviously get into a bunch of inflammatory statements about black women, while me and you, right, the viewer, you and myself, we're looking at his crispy, black, ugly ass, sit here and actually talk about black women in such a derogatory way. He simply does not meet the qualifications to roast anybody. So let's get into Tammy Naker Mayor.
It's just disgusting looking. Done tied anything up to their head. Some of them got ropes. Some of them got Brazilian yaki. It don't matter anything other than their own hair. 4 of them, fat. 4 of them did exactly what I've been telling y'all about. Told y'all what my ex-girlfriend said. They used to draw straws to see who would waitress a table full of black women. Black women are miserable people, and everybody knows this. This is not a freaking secret, but apparently when I say it, that there's a problem. There's no secret. They got a secret. There's no secret. Everybody knows that black women are miserable people, and the majority of people just don't like being around them. Well, Applebee's in Henry County, Georgia, had to find that out. Now, again, these 4 black Wakandans, these beautiful black queens, decided that they wanted to go into the Applebee's, drink, and do what black hoes do. Complain about service, try to get...
Oops. Now again, imagine this crispy, dusty, black, dirty bastard, right? Look at him. Imagine he's able to speak this way about black women, again, looking the way he looks. He looks like a buffoon, okay? He is a creature, barely a human, subhuman trash. To be speaking about black women in the community like this and really thinking that his opinion is important, right? At the end of the day, black women have a reputation in this country, and it's not of being outside of people who are trying to be stereotypical and prejudiced. The reputation is not this, right? We're the most employed, the most educated, whatever. Don't have to explain this for a bandit, but a bandit will get up here and act like his opinion about a black woman is the most important in the world. Okay, doing all of this, he got himself a position on Fox News being a neighborhood coon. Okay, let's continue.
Get stuff free, and if they don't get enough of it free, they just walk out. Can I get an amen? Somebody tell me in the comment section if I'm making this up. No matter what color you are, you know that the most miserable people to wait on or be waited on by are black women. Now, these were 4 black women who decided to stab their fellow black woman with a knife. Oh, what a knife it was that they did. Now, let me go ahead and let y'all take a look at this. First off, we're going to take a look at this one. We're going to take a look at this man right here. Let's see. He's going to tell us exactly what happened. Go ahead, Sweet Chuck. Tell us.
Applebee's on Industrial Boulevard in McDonough. Captured on video. This is where it all went down.
It is.
A waitress is attacked by 4 women, and they're showing no mercy. Police say not only are they beating the waitress.
First off, sir, you made a mistake. Those are not 4 women, those are 4 machines. Second off, you said they are showing no mercy. Reese done already told you about the Terminatrix.
Listen and understand that Terminator is out there. It can't be bargained with. It can't be reasoned with. It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. And it absolutely will not stop. Ever. Until you are dead.
Bet y'all never thought y'all see Reese this early in the broadcast, did you? Anyway, let's get on back.
Now imagine the arrogance to think that you can be this derogatory towards a group of men and women that accomplish way more than you and the group that you defend, right? Imagine thinking that you can be this inflammatory and that someday you will be a pinnacle in a YouTube community, right? He is nothing, right? He's nothing more than a neighborhood coon on Fox News. He can't even have his channel, or he keeps getting channels removed because once he was originally removed, he wasn't supposed to come back, but he keeps coming back like a roach, like a cucaracha. All right, so he's going to continue on with some more inflammatory statements, but I think I've had enough of this naker. So we're going to get rid of Tommy Sotomayor, and we're going to go back into the diagnostic criteria for narcissism in the DSM. So I like going oh, sorry, that's the wrong thing. I put up the wrong thing. I meant to put up the DSM criteria, and I actually just put up the definition on Britannica. So this is what we were looking at, right? It's characterized by grandiosity, which is this feelings of entitlement, condescending towards others, and believing that you're better than people. The other part of this antagonism is attention seeking, right? So they're trying to do anything to get others to focus on them, right? They want people to be admired by them. So it is sort of a insidious need that they have of other people, which is for other people to, thank you very much, Josh, for the Cash App. I appreciate you tonight for that. But, you know, they try to be so disruptive that people will focus on them, that they'll be the center of attention, and that they can get that admiration that they're looking for. All right. Crispy is going to F up and get sued. He can. I know there's people that are definitely going to try to, but he definitely can. So, all right, let us see here. So impairments in personality functioning and individuals' personality trait expression are relatively stable across time and consistent across situation. The impairments in personality function and individual's personality traits expression are not better understood as normative for the individual's developmental stage or socio-culture environment. All right, so those are just some, I'll leave those alone. But significant impairments in personality functioning manifest by issues with identity. So that's excessive reference to others for self-definition and self-regulation. So they want other people to tell them that they're good, tell them that they're intelligent, tell them that they are respectable, admirable, interesting, right? This is what people with this functionality issue have. They're just too focused on other people telling them who they are, right? Exaggerated self-appraisal may be inflated or deflated or facilitate between extremes. Emotional regulation and errors, fluctuation in self-esteem. So they go from loving themselves, hating themselves, adoring themselves, resenting themselves. They kind of bounce between these uncertainties about who they are and what they've accomplished pretty regularly. So they're always jumping up and down based on how they view themselves, right? So self-direction, again, this is that goal setting. They're not able to do things because they're so crippled by what they think other people want them to do. We talked about impairments in interpersonal functioning. This is that lack of empathy. So not being able to relate to others and how they're feeling. And so because you can't relate to others, you're very insensitive, you're very cold and callous. There's a lack of intimacy. Everything seems very superficial and surface level, right? Because you're not able to connect with people based on anything that's outside of serving your own needs. And so once people realize that, they're not going to feel close to you. What is wrong with these trolls? Yeah, they're ridiculous. Yeah, people just come in here and just talk. So I try to ignore them. All right, there's pathological personality traits in narcissistic personality disorder, and that's the grandiosity, which is that overinflated sense of self, feeling entitled, feeling super self-centered, and so you're very condescending and dismissive of other people. You know, you think yourself to be more important than they are. There's that attention seeking. You'll do, say, and engage in anything in order to seek admiration and attention from other people. Um, we talked about those things. Elevate your understanding of our narcissism and NPD. So, diagnostic criteria for borderline person. Oh, okay. Sorry, I went too far in that. So we'll continue with the discussion here. But pretty much what's going on is that with people that are narcissistic, they have those impairments in functioning, right? They're not able to function as an individual, right? They can't set goals or identify themselves as who they are. They can't keep relationships. And they can't keep relationships because they have these behaviors and mindsets that isolate them from others, right? Having that grandiosity, that inflated sense of self, can be discouraging. People aren't going to want to deal with somebody who thinks they're better than everybody, above everybody. That attention seeking gets old too, right? Every time you go out, they got to make a scene. Right? Every time we do something, they want to be the center of attention. It's exhausting. There are enough of you women leaders taking care of the problem. You want me to go around correcting grown women behavior? Yeah, these men are weird, Jalen. So I try not to pay them any mind because they just kind of talk just to talk. All right. So let's continue with the slides. I'll make sure we stay on task. Oh, that's the wrong one. Presentation. How about publicly shaming, poor behavior? No, said nothing about putting hands on anybody. I don't really know what you mean, Tiny Jaws, honestly. All right, so we talked about narcissism, and then there's psychopathy. Psychopathy is sort of that big one that is really involving criminality and those antisocial personality traits, right? The psychopath is the most dysfunctional one, the scariest one of in the dark triad. Obviously, narcissists can be scary as well, but the psychopath is one of the scarier ones because of their behavior set, right? So they have a set of dysfunctional interpersonal, emotional lifestyle and antisocial tendencies. They lack empathy, remorse. They have a lot of impulsiveness, manipulativeness, manipulativeness and deceitfulness, among other negative traits and behaviors. So let's pull up this Science Direct article here, where they sort of talk about the psychopath and how they present. All right, so I'm going to share that. You guys on YouTube are doing a good job shaming the loudmouths and good women. Yeah, you know, honestly, men on YouTube are the last people that anybody should be expecting to do anything in general. So this article here is actually going to talk about what a psychopath really is, how they view things, what makes them dysfunctional, and sort of the traits that they bring into interpersonal relationships that make them very difficult people to get along with. All right, so deficits in the ability to perceive and experience affect are associated with psychopaths. So that's their biggest issue, is that they can't relate to people, right? They can't understand, you know, why other people would be sad. They really aren't a really good readers of emotions. And so that makes it difficult for them to interact with other people because their emotions, their emotionlessness is inappropriate. All right. So a lot of the research on psychopathy is sort of inconsistent, right? They're more focused on single factors when there's a lot more factors at play in terms of how somebody presents as a psychopath, right? So this study considers psychopathic-like traits in college-age students as heterogeneous, meaning primary and secondary, and evaluated their relationship with the processing and experience of positive um, and negative affect. All right, so PE and NE in this article is going to describe positive affect and negative affect. The results generally indicated that primary psychopathic traits were positively correlated with the accuracy of perception of fearful faces and positive affect, and negatively associated with NE, which is negative affect, while secondary psychopathic traits were not related to emotional regulation or PE, but are positively associated with NE. Right, that's a lot of jargon to pretty much say that people with psychopathic traits aren't able to truly process the emotions that people wear on their face, right? They're not able to associate when they're putting someone at fear, right? Where they're creating positive emotions, and they're also not able to associate when they're creating negative emotions in people. All right, so we're going to go into a study here that they talk about by Cleckley of 1941, where they describe the sociopath as lacking a conscience, right? They're not able to really understand the implications of their actions and what that means for other people, right? Lacking a conscience meaning people are just going to do things. They don't care what effect that has on the individual, on a group of people, or whatever. They're just sort of very dismissive of feelings. So subsequently, primary and secondary psychopathy are more so broken into factors. So there's factor one and factor two. Factor two, they respectively are measures of psychopathy, and they have been distinguished for quite a while now. For example, primary psychopaths are thought to have constitutional deficit that leads to callous and manipulative behaviors, superficial relationships, and a lack of negative affects such as guilt, fear, anxiety. So imagine a world where you didn't feel any guilt, any anxiety, or fear, so that no matter what it is that you were doing, whether it was good or bad, that you weren't able to feel those emotions that usually would stop you from doing certain things, right? That guilt and fear, a lot of times, in those circumstances, can stop you from engaging in behaviors that hurt other people or could hurt yourself. They plan their behavior and socially rank themselves higher than others. So they're very calculated and sort of cunning people, and everything that they're doing is sort of based on this belief that they are above other people's. Right? So secondary psychopaths develop from environmental causes. So these are the psychopaths that come from, having bad parents, or just having parents that aren't really present, from neglect or trauma in childhood, or other issues that really aren't their, they're really not their fault. They're more so a result of issues that are going on already in that person's life, or are a result of their environment. Right? These problems usually lead to neuroticism, impulsivity, aggression, and emotional reactivity. Right? When you deal with these traumas and things in your childhood, you will find that your ability to regulate your emotions are impacted by those broken relationships. Right? The fact that you don't have the stable relationships where you know who are your people that you can rely on for emotional support, you will have that sort of chaoticness, that impulsivity, that aggression, those traits that can be sort of harmful in dealing with people. Are you really sitting here arguing about crispy? Go to bed, tiny jaws. All right, so these are sort of the psychopaths that are made per se, right? The primary psychopath, or the first one that we talked about, those are sort of like inherent traits in a person, right? This secondary psychopath is a psychopath that is made, right? They're created based off of nurture and nature, right? So their disturbed emotional capacities may often manifest in hostile reactivity that interferes with stable relationships and adaptive functioning. Research utilizing cluster analysis confirms that the existence of groups that parallel theoretical descriptions of primary and secondary psychopathy. Despite these findings, most research treats psychopathy as a homogeneous concept, while greater validity and reliability of results may stem from evaluating it based off of other factors. Theory indicates that psychopaths, excuse me, not psychopathy, psychopaths may process emotions differently than non-psychopaths. Psychopaths are believed to be incapable of efficiently understanding, utilizing, or grasping the meaning of affect aspects of language. Right, so they're not able to understand that if somebody is sad or anxious, right, this is what their face might look like. Right, if they're upset or feeling a certain way, they're not basically not able to read somebody's emotions that they wear on their face properly enough to interact with them. Right? Have you ever been in front of somebody that you just thought was so awkward and strange, right? And you told them a funny story, they didn't crack a smile, they didn't laugh, they just sort of looked at you, right? Their affect and the way that they view things is just not appropriate for the current situation. And that's sort of what you're going to be getting with the psychopath. They're going to be, they might come across very strange because the emotions that they are exhibiting aren't appropriate for the current situation, right? It's just outside of the norm, and so it might frighten some people, might make others uncomfortable. All right, let me just plug this in here. These emotional deficits may interfere with moral socialization, therefore making individuals susceptible to engaging in antisocial behavior, right? So because they can't process those emotions properly, the way that they're engaging with people will have them feel like they're antisocial. Hey, Asa, she says, I didn't know you were live. I'll have to play it back. Yeah, since I hit my channel, I'm still kind of dealing with either showing up in the algorithm or not, people getting notifications or not. But yes, I'm here tonight talking about the Dark Triad. We're focused right now on psychopathy and sort of getting a better idea of what a psychopath truly looks like. And so again, they have those emotional deficits, and because of that, they're not able to behave in a regular social way. They're sort of coming across very antisocial. Research generally supports a link between the antisocial standard living in psychopaths and difficulty processing emotional, facial, and vocal expressions of distress. All right. So the one thing I'll say about these definitions is that I feel like they sort of give the psychopath an out, right? They sort of imply that it's not that the psychopath, it's not that they don't understand people in distress, it's that they have no reaction to it, right? So instead of them, when they hear somebody screaming, instead of them understanding, hey, that's an appropriate reaction to me choking them up, right? If I'm yanking you up your neck by your neck, you screaming and being scared, that's an appropriate reaction, right? That should cause some sort of distress in any person if I were to do that. They're implying here that the psychopath doesn't know. I don't think it's that the psychopath doesn't know. I think it's that they're not able to care, right? They don't care about the reaction of somebody who's scared. Someone screaming, begging them for their life doesn't impact them the way a regularly social person would be impacted by that same begging. I wear boots all the Miss Jalen, you're silly. But yeah, so that psychopath, it's more than just about what they're capable of. I think they just are not able to care. Right? There is inconsistency in these findings. So again, the research sort of says that, right? It says that they're not able to understand distress, but I think the issue is that they don't care. And they, at the end of the day, a lot of these forensic scientific studies and things like that, of course, they're going to say that they don't care. Sorry, they're not going to say that they don't care. They're going to just imply that they didn't know or they didn't understand. But at the end of the day, I feel like these people really don't give a fuck. Right? They know, they understand, that somebody's in distress, but they're just not able to care. There's nothing, there's no feelings. It doesn't tug at their heart to see someone screaming while they got them yoked up against the wall, right? That doesn't register to them. It's not that it doesn't register to them, but it doesn't hit them the same way a regular person, right? Me, I couldn't just start yanking somebody by the neck and choking them out, right? For me personally, I would feel scared to do that, right? If I, even if I was got the curse to start doing that, I would feel remorse. I would be like, oh no, I can't choke this person out. Let me stop, right? So when they're begging for their life, that will have an effect on me. A psychopath is gonna look at that and it's gonna have no effect. They're not gonna care. We're gonna be like, you know what, this is a means to an end. I have to kill this person in order for me to steal their food stamp card, right? I have to kill them in order for me to get their Jordans, right? There's no real emotions there. The emotions that they're feeling are not appropriate for what they're doing. And that's the difference in the psychopath. I don't think that they're necessarily not able to understand. I think they don't care. Right? It doesn't affect them to hear somebody begging for their life, and that's a very different than them not being aware of what it is they're doing. And that's why I think the research is not consistent. So some research demonstrates that juveniles and adults with psychopathic traits in forensic and college samples have difficulty identifying fearful faces and voices. Hell no. If I hear someone screaming at the top of their lungs, "Help! Get away!" I'm gonna think they're in distress. I'm gonna think they're in distress. You're not gonna convince me that a psychopath hears somebody screaming like that and they don't understand that that person is screaming because they're gonna choke them out. You know why they're screaming. You know what you're gonna do to them that is making them scream and be in fear for their life. So I just think that sometimes with these psychological definitions, people think that it gives these perpetrators, these people with these disorders, an out. It really doesn't, right? It just sort of explains their callousness, their inability to care or feel sympathy for what it is that they're doing to people a lot of the times. Right, and there is a lot of criminality in this, so there's that too. I don't really trust what a criminal is going to say. Um, Other research has found difficulty identifying only sad voices, while facial affect recognition research has found that they have difficulty recognizing both sadness and fear. Now, again, the fact that they're not reactive, people's sadness and fear, that's what I think the situation is. I don't think that it's necessarily that they don't understand that a person is sad or, in fear of them. I think they know very well what feelings that they cause in people, but they're just not able to react to it like a regular person. They're not able to care enough to change or try to curb their behavior. They're still gonna, they're still gonna engage in whatever problematic behavior they think that it is that they're interested in doing. The difference is that they're gonna know that they're doing, something distressing, right? However, all right, so these researchers hypothesize that psychopaths do not recognize distress cues from their victim and therefore do not pair their antisocial behavior with the distress of others. Wrong. I don't believe that. However, Hayes in 2005 found that psychopathy was related to a deficit in recognizing happy and sad faces at low intensity levels. Additionally, Kassan, Suchi, and Mayer 2002 found that an adult psychopathic group was more likely to be deficient in identifying the emotion disgust and better at recognizing anger on the face of non-psychopaths. Book 2005 also found that psychopathic inmates were better at identifying emotional facial cues, specifically fear, right? So that's why I think, there is some there is some discrepancies in the research. I personally think that a criminal is going to know that what they do causes fear in people, right? So they're very well able to read when they scare somebody, when they put fear in a person. So that's why I sort of think they're a lot more cognizant than some of the research suggests. So authors hypothesize that psychopaths might have this sensitive awareness because in order to be deceitful, they must be skilled at identifying emotions that indicate distress, right? Those things that they're looking for in a person is ultimately going to help them manipulate people, right? It's going to teach them, they're going to be able to understand when they've made a person scared, when they've intimidated somebody, them knowing how to knowing how to read certain people's behaviors and emotions is actually going to help for the functions of a psychopath, right? It's going to help them to better be able to read the people that they're trying to manipulate. All right, these findings indicate, these inconsistencies and findings may be because past research evaluates psychopathy homogeneously, ignoring the indications that the two types of psychopathy may differentially associated with the perception of emotional cues. Research investigating other aspects of emotional perception, like the startle reflex to pictures or sounds, shows different relationships between the subtypes and emotional processing. One possibility is that those with primary psychopathic traits who are callous, right, cold, cunning, but charming and foster relationships for manipulation and cunning purposes may need to, as Book suggested, be better at identifying emotional facial cues, specifically fear and anger, in order to be successfully deceitful or know when to change strategies, right? So, in order for them to continue to abuse and manipulate people, they need to know when the manipulation that they're doing is working, right? So they have to know how to read people. They have to know when they're scaring people. They have to know when a person is truly isn't seeing any issues, when somebody finds them charming, when somebody believes them, trust them. They're supposed to be able to read those cues on a person's face, so that way if they're no longer coming across trustworthy, or if they're no longer able to manipulate a person, they can learn obviously that they have to do something else, that they have to change their strategy, like they say in this article. Secondary sociopaths, psychopaths, tend to be reactively aggressive and demonstrate hostile attribution biases, demonstrate more errors in emotional perception. So those secondary psychopaths are more reactive. They're sort of responding to stimuli. They're responding to their environment. Maybe they're in a tough situation, and that's where their response comes from. It's not like the primary psychopath who's actually trying to manipulate people into doing what they want them to do. Psychopaths are also believed to lack the capacity to feel emotions such as fear, guilt, or anxiety. These unpleasant emotional states combined together are considered negative emotionality. When the types of psychopaths are differentiated in terms of affect experience, primary psychopaths are defined by deficient anxiety, guilt, and fear, which suggests low NE profile, and secondary psychopaths are characterized by having more neuroticism, impulsivity, right? So they're acting based off of how they're feeling in the moment. They're more likely to be depressed, right? Lingering on those feelings of sadness, angry, right? That's an emotion that's pretty typical as well in people who are traumatized and distressed, right? So the empirical research in this area is somewhat inconsistent. We really aren't getting a great idea of which is which, right? Because of the fact that psychopaths are sort of broken down into these two categories, but the research never included those two categories in psychopathy. So that's the psychopath. That's the third element of the dark triad. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on that aspect of it because I want to make sure that we actually get into um, the dark triad and sort of how it came together in order to be studied as these harmful personality traits. All right, so let me get my presentation back up and we will continue. All right, so we just finished off with psychopathy. Oops, sorry guys, I went too far. All right, so we just finished off with psychopathy. We looked at the Science Direct article. Oh, and now we're going to go on to the next slide. So these three characteristic traits come together to make the dark triad, right? So the dark triad is not an individual personality trait. It's not an individual personality disorder. It's a combination of these three traits. And they're some of the scarier traits of personality disorders because they tend to indicate a lot of criminality in the people who exhibit them. All right, so let me pull up, which actually we looked at that. We looked at the narcissistic personality disorder. But let me see. I think I have one on antisocial personality disorder as well. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna see if this is the right one that I was trying to put up a little bit earlier. Copy, paste, and go. Okay, yes. So this one, so basically, I wanted to look at the DSM criteria for all personality disorders, right? Like I said earlier in this video, Machiavellianism is probably the only one that doesn't have a pathological diagnosis. Machiavellianism is not one of the personality disorders. It's not something that it's not like a. There's no diagnostic criteria for it in the DSM, um, but it's a trait within all of these different personality disorders. Nonetheless, it's just not an individual personality disorder on its own. So let me. Sorry, guys. I'm getting all my notifications about my steps today. All right, so let me pull this up a little bit. So outside of each individual personality disorder, there's a criteria that actually helps us to really understand what personality disorders are. Right? So when we talk about this stuff, we're talking about real clinical terms here. This is not just gaslighting terms for bandits and things like that. These are actual criterias for mental illnesses that people will be exhibiting. And so just like there are narc and all these other different personality disorders, there is just general personality disorders as well, and that's what the DSM can diagnose as well. So they'll describe a personality disorder as an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectation of the individual's culture, right? So this person isn't like everyone else, and that's not in a way to try and make people feel like they have to act like everyone, they have to follow the grain or whatever it is. These are just people who they don't fit the expectations of what adults are expected to do. For example, in America, right here, we're expected to go to work, go to school, have a career, have a family, have a maybe a spouse or whatever. These are regular cultural expectations, right? A person with a personality disorder isn't gonna succumb to any of that. This person might feel like, they want to dominate the earth, they want to be the next ruler of America. Like they might just have issues with actually feeling connected to the purposes that we sort of get outlined in our own cultures, right? So this pattern is manifested in two or more of the following areas. So either in cognition, which is the way you perceive and interpret yourself, other people, and the things that are going on, right? So a person with a personality disorder might have issues with how they view the world, how they view other people, right? And it makes this makes them really difficult to interact with, difficult to be around, right? People who have issues with affect and appropriate emotions, they're going to be hard to deal with too, because they might come across awkward, inappropriate. They might just come across weird in general, right? You might be crying and they might just sit there and look at you like, right? Whatever it is that they're displaying, their emotional reactivity is not normal. It's not what people usually see or expect out of each other. Interpersonal functioning, we obviously talked about that. They're not able to keep friendships, relationships. Really, they're not able to have any long-lasting, relationships with anyone outside of, family or people that they have to interact with. And the last one in this personality definition of personality disorders is impulse control, right? Somebody who isn't able to control what it is that they feel like they want to do, their inhibitions. They're not able to keep any of that under control. So usually people who have an personality disorder are characterized by these different types of things. So basically, it looks like they revised this around 2011, but they want to be more specific. So significant impairments in self are things that specifically impact their identity and self-direction and empathy or intimacy. So they started off pretty general, and as time went on, they made it a little bit more specific to to be understanding in this case, right? So somebody with the DSM criteria for somebody with antisocial personality disorder, right? So antisocial personality disorder, according to the DSM, is characterized by a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others occurring since age 15 years or older, as indicated by 3 or more of the following. So having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. Failure to comply to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness as indicated by lying, use of aliases, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Right? These people are impulsive and they fail to plan ahead. They're irritable and aggressive, as indicated by repeated physical fights and assault. Right? They just can't keep their hands off of other people because they're so irritable and aggressive, and they just have no regard for their own actions. Right? So they're consistently irresponsible. This is repeated failure to get work. They're not able to honor their financial obligations, right? So they don't go to work, they don't pay their bills. They're just not on time with anything, right? Now, let's not get too carried away with this. A lot of people are fiscally irresponsible. That's not what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about people who have no ability to take care of themselves, finances, nothing. They're just irresponsible across the board, right? They can't be relied on pretty much for anything when it comes to being consistent and holding a job, right? And another characteristic, the last one in this paragraph here, is a lack of remorse as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing, right? So every time they do something wrong, every time they engage in a certain behavior, they're able to rationalize themselves out of it, right? You know, I smashed her windows because she's a bitch, right? Right. I stole all of her shoes, and I robbed her furniture because she's greedy and self-centered and thinks she's better than everybody, right? They're always going to find a reason to justify the bad things that they do to other people. This is just what an antisocial person is. They don't really understand empathy. They don't understand having compassion for other people. They have no regard for for what other people want or need out of them. Everything that they do is, in order for them to satisfy themselves. And again, like we talked about earlier yesterday, they have impairments in self-functioning and impairments in interpersonal functioning. That's something that a lot of people with personality disorders just have. They're not able to keep friends, and they're not able to function on their own. All right, the individual is at least 18 years old. So obviously, before somebody will be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, they likely will have conduct disorder when they were younger. It just tends to be a pipeline from that to that. The occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or a manic episode. So their antisocial behavior isn't just in a one-time thing. It isn't only in specific circumstances. Everything that they do is antisocial. So it's specifically something that is more constant. It's not just like it's not, for example, just like a moment. It's not like an episode. It's something that's just part of their actual traits. So the pathological personality traits that someone with antisocial personality will exhibit will be manipulativeness. So just like the other categories of the dark triad, they'll be deceitful. So they're dishonest, they're fraudulent, they misrepresent themselves, they embellish and fabricate things that go on in their life. Basically, they're just storytellers, right? They're callous, so they don't concern themselves with other people's feelings or problems. They only really care about others in relation to what it can do for them. They don't feel guilt or remorse. And they don't really feel bad about the things that they do. So they can hurt people, harm people, and even be sadistic and not feel guilty about it at all. They're also hostile, right? So they have persistent or frequent angry feelings. They're usually upset, right? Something is always bothering them. They can never get to the root of that irritability. And little things will set them off and make them mean, nasty, and vengeful. Right? That's kind of how we're characterizing hostility as it relates to antisocial personality disorder. They have a disinhibition, right? They're irresponsible. They don't care about the fact that they might have a job, the fact that they might have told somebody, hey, I owe you 20 bucks, I'm gonna pay you this Saturday. They might have said that and they have no regard for it. They're like, you know what, that bitch got more than another $20. She don't need my $20. They will literally make excuses for all of their irresponsible and inappropriate behavior, right? So they're impulsive as well. So they do things based off of a spur of the moment feelings, right? If something upsets them in the moment, they might decide, hey, I'm going to go run over there and do something. That sounds so hard to do. Yeah, Lana, a lot of the times these people are just professional victims, right? They will always find a reason not to be their best self. They'll find a reason not to do the things that they promise other people that they're going to do. They basically find an out for themselves anytime that they can. And that's just part of their personality, right? So again, they have that impulsivity there. They don't plan. They don't consider all the outcomes. They sort of just do. Right. And then there's that risk taking, right? They're seeking thrills, they're seeking danger. They want to do things that will make them feel, right? They're just so bored by everyday things, right? For me, reading a book, laying in my bed, having a snack, watching TV, those type of things are activities that keep my interest. I don't need to be, riding a motorcycle at 160 miles down the highway in order for me to feel like not bored, right? But these people who are risk takers, they're antisocial, they need these risk-taking activities to give them a sense of purpose, for them to feel like they have something going on. So their risk-taking could be very difficult to deal with. Lana says, I beat myself up from the inside. Yeah, it's crazy. They have impairments in personality, impairments in functioning relationships and things like that. And these are just all the regular things that apply to all the personality disorders, right? So we have some more because there's a lot of personality disorders. I want to go through some of how the DSM breaks these down so that you guys can really understand them. All right, so the next one we have here is avoidant personality. Right, this is a pervasive pattern of social inhibition, feelings of inadequacy, hypersensitivity to negative evaluation, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, and as indicated by 4 or more of the following. All right, so they give you a criteria, and then if you got 4 or more of these, then a qualified mental health licensed professional or physician will likely diagnose you with one of these disorders. So they avoid occupational activities that involve a lot of interpersonal contact. So maybe if it's like a get to know you day, or it's just sort of like a co-worker bingo, they might avoid these things because they don't want to get close to people. They're afraid of being rejected, of being criticized. They're just hyper focused on how other people will view them. All right, so they're unwilling to get involved with people unless certain of being liked. So they're more likely not to go outside of their social comfort zone, right? If they feel like the people in that environment might have a certain standard of the type of people that they want to be around, if they feel like in any way they're going to be judged, they're not going to go there. They show restraint within intimate relationships because of the fear of being shamed or ridiculed. Right? So they might be afraid to move forward in a relationship. They might be afraid to show that they actually like someone or reciprocate feelings because they feel like that person, might actually be playing them. They might feel like that person don't really want them. It's all a show. A lot of these fears that they have are irrational, right? They're based off of excessive fear of being disliked or fear of being ostracized. Right? So they're preoccupied with being criticized or rejected in social situations. They can't even go to a party without worrying about if people like their clothes, their hair, the people want to be around them, if people are roasting them. They're just more worried about how others see them. And so that makes them stay away from interactions and social interactions with other people. So is inhibited in new interpersonal situations because of feelings of inadequacy. So they're always pulling back. They're never really engaging with people because they're afraid of not being liked. Right? So they view their self as being socially inept inept, being unappealing, or inferior to other people, right? So they don't feel like they have the social skills to be around others. They don't feel like they have anything to offer. They don't feel like they really have any qualities that make them socially interesting or likable. This is their own view. It's not reality. It's just what they feel about themselves. And they're usually reluctant to take personal risks or engage in new activities because they're afraid of being embarrassed. Now, I'm sure some of you guys who maybe went through an emo phase or might have been a little nerdy back in the day, you might recognize some of this stuff and be like, damn, I might have been young and having exhibiting an avoidant personality because I just was not, interacting with others, and I wasn't, I wasn't putting myself out there. But this is sort of a characteristic of an avoidant personality. It doesn't mean that you couldn't have just been exhibiting traits. And I think a lot of us might have gone through this phase, but again, it's just a phase. It doesn't stay forever. But people with this personality disorder, they have limits in identifying themselves, self-direction, so they're not able to function personally. They're also not able to function in relationships with people because they're always worried about being liked, right? They think their partner is overly scrutinizing and judging them. And so that keeps them from being vulnerable and opening up in a way that will be, that will help you connect to somebody to be in a relationship with them. Pathological personality traits in this personality disorder are characterized by detachment, right? So they're keeping themselves away from people because they're afraid to get hurt. So this includes withdrawing from social situations, avoiding social contact and activity, and literally not initiating social interactions because of their fear of being rejected or not being accepted. So they'll also avoid intimacy. So they might avoid having close friendships and romantic relationships because they're afraid of being, again, ridiculed. They're afraid of not being liked, not being accepted. They're afraid of people finding a quality about them that they maybe don't like. All right. And then the last one, or one of the other ones in this one, is anhedonia. So it's a lack of enjoyment from engagement in or energy of life's experiences. So it's a deficit in capacity to feel pleasure or take interest in things. So a lot of times when they have those self-report quizzes for if people feel depressed or whatever, one of the main things they'll ask is, do you feel pleasure doing certain things? Or do you still get any pleasure out of doing things that you used to enjoy, right? That's a way of them measuring, your anhedonia. Right, so negative affectivity that they're characterized, as well as anxiousness, right? So they feel intensely nervous, tense, panic, right? They're overreactive in these social environments. They're worried about people, judging them for things they might have done in the past, viewing them in a certain way, embarrassing them. They're just worried about some of the most irrational things and for no reason. And again, they give that criteria for all of that. All right, so let me see where we're at on the PowerPoint and continue. Hold on, guys. So we'll stop sharing that. And let me... Okay. Presentation. Traits. Okay, it always takes me to the beginning of this. All right, so we pretty much looked at all of that, all those different personality disorders and sort of broke it down, right? So now we're moving on to the concept of Machiavellianism. So Machiavellianism is one of the only traits that doesn't have a pathological nature, right? It's not connected to any personality disorder, but it is a trait that you see amongst a lot of the personality disorders. And Machiavellian people are really just super manipulative, right? Everything that they're doing is to meet a means to an end, right? They're befriending people, they're getting jobs, they're showing up in social environments as a means to an end. And so these can tend to be people who are similar to narcs, where it's all about status and getting to a certain level, where they're not really focused on anything about that person. They're not focused on the relationship. They're focused on maintaining that connection or whatever it is in order to feel powerful. They do say that Machiavellianism is more common in women, and I'm going to assume that that's because of the behaviors that are used to describe manipulation, right? They're going to talk about how women use their bodies, femininity, their womb, whatever it is to manipulate. But a lot of the times, women have to use manipulation as a tactic because otherwise, they're just going to be exploited for being the lesser sex, the lesser vessel, whatever it is. Men have a million reasons why, women have to compete in things like that, or that they want women to compete in things like that. So they will generally make women have to manipulate them into doing what they want instead of just doing what it is that would be conducive to a healthy and a good relationship or good situation, whatever you want to call it. Machiavellianism sort of focuses on that manipulative side of it. All right. So the difference also as well in the dark triad is that when we're talking about narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, in the dark triad, it's being exhibited at a lower intensity. Right. So that basically just means that the narcissistic trait in the dark triad is not necessarily someone with a personality disorder. Right. They just happen to have some traits. And they might even have another one of the traits in the dark triad. Right. So their commonalities make them interesting to study, right? So even though these traits aren't necessarily all connected to a personality disorder, the fact that they're connected in this way because of their callousness, because of their disregard for others and the criminality that's involved in it, it actually creates a lot of implications for studying these different personality traits. All right, so let's talk about the psychopath in the family. Now, this part of it I found very interesting because I do feel like when we talk about psychopaths, we're usually talking about them as they impact other people, right? We don't really talk about like if your sibling is a psychopath or if your parent is a psychopath. We don't really talk about those type of psychopaths that much. So I like this article that I have here because it's sort of focused on the psychopath in the family. Oh jeez, what is going on here? Oh, okay. I'm like, what? Did I double click? All right, I'm gonna share my screen so you guys can look at this article that we're gonna focus on. So we're basically gonna look at the psychopath as relative to the family, um, and this part of psychopathy being studied is a little bit more. Excuse me. It's a little bit more difficult to understand. Hold on. Oh boy. Now I understand what's going on right now. You guys are just being dramatic out there. So that's what people are dealing with right now. Okay. Well, not my business. Anyways, let's continue. All right. So the impact of the psychopath on the family. So psychopathy is the amalgamation of personality disorder traits associated with criminal and antisocial behavior. So the psychopath is sort of that evil twin or evil whatever within this dark triad of the three because they have such negative criminal behaviors. Let me make my screen a little bit bigger. Um, All current theory postulates that psychopathic individuals do not form lasting bonds with other people, but this chapter kind of provides evidence that individuals with psychopathy are highly social and maintain ties over years, right? So most of us would think, right, if somebody's a psychopath, if they have psychopathic tendencies, like we've been reading all night, they don't have friends, they don't have relationships, there's nobody that they can really connect to. They're all on their lonely own little psychopathic island, disconnected from the world. But the reality is that a lot of times psychopathic people are amongst all of us, right? A lot of people go mentally undiagnosed for the issues that they're suffering from, right? They might be acting up, acting crazy all day in front of their friends, family members, co-workers, and because somehow they're able to maintain those relationships for whatever reasons, whether it be their charm or whatever, people don't really notice what is, how insidious their behaviors are. Hey, I am the single one. What's going on front porch? How are you guys doing tonight? I hope you guys are having a good drama-free night, right? There's a lot of drama going on tonight, but I'm just here to talk to you guys about the psychopath, and specifically the effect that they have on the family. So thank you for popping in when you guys did. We are going to talk a little bit about the different relationships that a psychopath has, whether it be with friends, co-workers, relatives, siblings, parents, romantic partners, and children, right? You heard that right. Psychopathic people have kids, right? They're not these lonely, isolated people on an island. They're just like me and you. They might even be one of your boyfriends or girlfriends. They might be your husband. They might be your daddy. When we talk about these concepts of people with personality disorders and issues, we just tend to think that this is so far removed, right? A psychopath is such a rare individual. But some of our life experiences will have you believe otherwise, right? Some of the people that we encounter, man or woman, might fit this definition purely and cleanly, right? We might be interacting with psychopaths every day of our lives, but because so many people go undiagnosed and these issues go unaddressed, a lot of the times we just have to suck it up, right? We just have to deal with these psychopathic, sociopathic, narcissistic, whatever name that you have for them. We just have to tolerate these people because in society, we don't deal with these mental health issues. We don't get treatment. All right, so we're going to focus on this one. Just give me 1 second to grab something over here. Well, that's my little bag. All right. All right, so they can pretty much be anyone in our lives. And because of the fact that, psychopathy is usually only studied in certain ways, right? So instead of looking at the psychopath as somebody that can be amongst any of us, we sort of view them as these rare psychomaniac individuals that are just running rampant, deleting people and all types of things. That's really not who a psychopath is. They can be anyone that we would like to interact with. And these relationships still do serve a purpose for them, right? They're not just any old functional relationship. These are relationships that serve their social and material needs. All right, so in this chapter that we're going to be reading here together tonight, we're going to focus on psychopathy as a problem within families and in other contexts like relationships and things like that, like I have on the slide that I had on the screen a second ago. All right, so introduction to psychopathy as a family problem. So the belief that psychopathic individuals do not form lasting bonds with others, arguments over nomenclature and lack of research outside of forensic settings have hindered study of psychopathy in the family, right? So because we sort of believe that psychopathic people are these other emotionally disturbed people that they would just be so obvious, we don't focus on the facts that people in our families, people that we're related and closely related to, can very well be psychopathic. So although the connection between psychopathy and crime perpetration is well documented, rate of victimization of friends and relatives is unknown. Intrafamilial physical, sexual, psychological, and financial abuse is the subject of epidemiological investigations. However, the connection between familial victimization and symptoms of psychopathy in perpetrators is not established. If psychopathy is indeed the unified theory of crime, risk for family and friend victimization likely increases linearly and perhaps exponentially with the symptoms of the disorder, right? So these people who unfortunately have the misfortune of having psychopathic family members or friends, they're suffering the most because we're not doing the research on these interactions that they do have. We just sort of believe that they all don't have any friends or relationships. So, two recent handbooks regarding psychopathy and law have chapters outlining family psychopathy and its legal consequences, but little data is actually in them. None of the most authoritative edited academic books regarding psychopathy published between 2001 and 2015 contain any discussion on the impact of psychopathic individuals on their family members and friends. Because believe it or not, a lot of you, to the tune of 8 million, right? So because out of the whatever 100 millions of people in America, there's a percentage, about 4 to 6% of Americans, that actually qualify, whether they're diagnosed or not, as having a personality disorder. And so those 8 million people who are interacting with people with personality disorders are basically, there's no treatment recommendations or help for those people, right? They're just stuck with being the family members to these individuals with very, very problematic behavior. All right, so Cleckley mentioned the plight of numerous family members in 15 case studies he presented in The Mask of Sanity. Although Cleckley's writing is over 60 years old, descriptions of psychopathic individuals' relationships have not changed. One recently edited book details the initial evaluation of Frank, an individual with psychopathic traits. So a lot of the times when people are studying these psychopathic personality disorders and things like that, we do a lot of vignettes and like scenarios and things like that. There isn't a lot of specific book definitions of things. A lot of the times we're going to give you an example of a psychopathic person with traits and do like a vignette or some type of story, not story, but some type of evaluation that's going to break it down in that particular way. Like Cleckley, the evaluating clinician obtained history from family members when Frank himself was not forthcoming with information. The psychosocial history described Frank's victimization of family members, including his younger brother, maternal aunt, maternal grandparents, two cousins, pets, lifelong friend, and wife. So Joshua has been a terror. No, sorry, Frank has been a terror. I'm sorry, Josh. Frank has been a terror and pretty much has made every single family member that he's interacted, including his wife, a victim of his callous nature. All right, so Frank's case illustrates the extent to which community clinicians rely on family members when evaluating and treating individuals with psychopathy. Right, so if their family, friends, the people in their environment aren't calling it out and sort of being forthcoming with the issues that they're having with these individuals, their behavior and the treatment of their family members can go unchecked. Right, so these family members might just be dealing with a psychopathic family member and really not addressing any of those behaviors at all. Right, so this person just gets to go around making everybody their victim, and especially if nobody in the family is willing to speak up to a clinician or to the law about what it is that their family member is doing. So the impact of psychopathic individuals on family members is thus well known to clinicians who have heard numerous detailed accounts of victimization during history taking. Clinicians are also aware of psychopathy when there is co-occurring substance disorder, right? So the thing that sucks about a lot of these personality disorders is that they're comorbid. So they don't just exist with themselves. Somebody will have a personality disorder, they'll also have a gambling addiction, they'll have a substance use disorder, and all of these things combined create a very chaotic individual for somebody to deal with. All right, I'm gonna pull up a video because I want to sort of talk about a little bit of a deeper understanding of some of these things that we're talking about here, because a lot of times we like to think, oh, if somebody's psychopathic, or if some friend or whatever individual that we're interacting is clearly dysfunctional, we're gonna know, right? We're gonna very clearly be able to catch it. But a lot of these behaviors can be subtle, and people with personality disorders are not always unable to read social cues. They're not always antisocial, and they're not always lacking in the ability to at least read emotions, even if they can't feel them. A lot of the times they'll be able to read empathy and even mimic and mirror some emotions that they see amongst people. So let's get into this. So we'll talk about the 8 signs someone is hiding their true personality as it relates to the dark triad.
Ever had the feeling that someone is hiding their true self from you? Much of the ups and downs of being a human are dictated by the company we keep, whether it's our friendships, intimate relationships, family, or coworkers. We are constantly dealing with a multitude of characters and personalities. Unless you live alone on a farm, the chances are you are interacting with about 15 to 25 people per day. Although this number could be much more for some of us. The question is, though, how many of those people do we really know? Whilst it would be nice to assume we are all open and honest with everyone we meet, the reality, sadly, is that it's not the case. In this video, we will be diving into the darker parts of the human brain and giving you tips to spot when someone is hiding who they really are. Make sure you watch until the end, as it gets pretty crazy. The Dark Triad. A collection of negative personality traits that not a lot of people are aware of is something called the Dark Triad. This is a constellation of 3 partly overlapping traits. Those are narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. All 3 of these traits are characterized by the tendency to influence others for selfish gains. The issue arises because humans who exhibit all 3 of these dark triad traits are often far more apt at hiding them from those around them. They might be able to mimic empathy and will often appear charming and outgoing at first despite the narcissistic personality disorder they are hiding underneath. This is why it's important to be aware of the 3 traits that make up the dark triad, as while they might be able to hide some of them, they will not be able to hide all of them. Here are 5 ways to spot the signs of the dark triad. Number 1. Risky behavior. Recklessness is a huge dark triad red flag. People with this personality type are likely to adopt significant risks in exchange for small rewards. This can be as obvious as risky gambling bets, overspending, or a willingness to break the law in some ways without considering the consequences. An example of
Oh, hey, my bad, Free JDC. I was trying to highlight your comment. My mouse was sticking, so, I fixed it. You're not hidden from the chat, but I did accidentally hit the hidden button just in case it takes you a minute. So, my bad. But yes, so pretty much what we're talking about here is the fact that these individuals are specifically cunning, right? They're able to hide their intentions. They're able to hide who they are, even though what they're really feeling is not real. They're able to express it in a way that tricks people. This is why they're so dangerous and can be it can be harmful to interact with these people. So let's continue though.
This might be being prepared to drive a car whilst under the influence of alcohol. Number 2, a lack of empathy. We've already mentioned this, but dark triad members often have difficulty understanding people's emotions. They can hide this at first, but the truth will always come out. Those who score higher for psychopathic tendencies often find it difficult to describe feelings, or understand the feelings others are having. Take note of your friends and partners' levels of self-awareness. Are they able to recognize when you feel upset or uncomfortable, or does it go completely unnoticed until you tell them outright? Number 3, they are unreceptive. People with dark triad traits are rarely described as being friendly. Often they are disagreeable and act as if others should earn their friendliness. They might feel that it's not their job to make being with them an enjoyable experience, but rather other people should try and bring the best out of them. Once again, this is not always obvious, as people with the dark triad can be friendly when it suits them. This would be considered Machiavellianism, as they might manipulate others by sweet-talking and charming them. The question one needs to ask themselves is this person being friendly because they are trying to get something from me? By the way, make sure to subscribe if you've learned something new today. Number 4, aggressiveness. Volatility and aggression are a far more obvious trait to spot. What's interesting, though, is that people who score high for psychopathy and Machiavellianism frequently have an extremely dark sense of humor. Finding joy in other people's pain or constantly making jokes that put down others or even themselves is something to look out.
So now this is a big one too, right? Because a lot of times people will see some people who claim to be positive or claim to be popular, at least claim to be at the top of the social ladder. You know, they might even have a lot of connections with people that you admire, that you like. But for some reason, they can't stop themselves from coming at people in a dark way, right? Having a lot of dark jokes, a lot of negative feedback for how people look, how they act, whatever it is. They might always have something bad to say about somebody. They always have to be putting somebody down. And I always think about people, regular people, right, who don't have anything wrong with them, needing to put people down as a defense mechanism, right? As for some form of inferiority that they feel themselves, they feel the need to constantly be putting people down. And now, you guys might be thinking, oh, she's just projecting. She's just talking poorly about whoever, whatever. But for me, I have actually been in a point in my life where I was so insecure, so upset with myself, feeling so low that I did feel like I had to be dragging other people and speaking poorly about them just to enjoy myself. I know I can say that right now because I actually have evolved from that, right? I don't sit here now and be laughing at stupid, ugly, dumb, whatever people. That was a lower part of myself. I was a lot younger, and I did sort of do it out of like a defense mechanism because I was worried about who I was, how I presented, right? And I think a lot of the times, you know, people who always feel the need to be harping on what other people are doing wrong or how low and how nothing ass certain people are, there's a dark pathology to that. There's a certain need that they're fulfilling in themselves by continuously doing that, because the normal in me eventually felt like, okay, you're doing too much. Why do you feel the need to be dragging or roasting or whatever people? And I'm not talking about roasting people who deserve it, right? I'm talking about just like coming at people for their insecurities or for whatever flaws that I perceive in them. That's something that sometimes we can do because we're feeling low about ourselves. And if we can be honest with it, we can overcome the behavior and stop acting that way. But if we're just going to be, you know, defensive and act like it's not real, that's where you find people who stay in these lower states where they're always feeling the need to belittle people as a way of feeling better about themselves. All right, so let's continue this video.
Out for. Using self-deprecating humor out of neediness or defensiveness could be considered Machiavellianism, as they might be putting themselves down in order to make people feel sorry for them. Number 5, addiction. Finally, people on the dark triad spectrum have a tendency to addiction and obsessiveness, often relating to substances, though it might be over people or activities as well. Grandiose narcissism is strongly tied to addiction, particularly alcohol addiction. All addiction can be treated, but if the addiction is a sign of a different personality trait, this is even more scary. There are other ways to spot the dark triad, or that someone is hiding who they really are. Psychologists have actually gone as far as to compose a list of 28 questions and statements that define whether and where someone is on the dark triad spectrum. To help you out, we've compiled the entire list for you. We'll start with the 7 questions that uncover the trait of Machiavellianism. All of these questions and statements should be answered on the scale of 1 to 5. And of course, the more that are answered or you deem would be answered, as a 5 determines how far on the dark triad spectrum someone is. Number 1, it's not wise to let people know your secrets. Number 2, whatever it takes, you must get the important people on your side. Number 3, avoid direct conflict with others because they may be useful in the future. Number 4, keep a low profile if you want to get your way. Number 5, manipulating the situation takes planning. Number 6, flattery is a good way to get people on your side. Number 7, I love it when a tricky plan succeeds. As you can see, all 7 of these questions point towards manipulation and deception in order to get what suits oneself. Asking these to yourself about someone you suspect might be exhibiting traits of Machiavellianism will be helpful in determining whether or not you are correct, as well as how correct you are. Now, let's look at the 7 questions and statements to figure out the narcissistic trait. Number 1, people see me as a natural leader. Number 2, I have a unique talent for persuading people. Number 3, group activities tend to be dull without me. Number 4, I know that I am special because people keep telling me so. Number 5, I have some exceptional qualities. Number 6, I'm likely to become a future star in some area. Number 7, I like to show off every now and then. These questions all revolve around self-obsession. Of course, we are all a little obsessed.
So now, obviously, with this one, right, this self-obsession, the questions are obviously going to be interpreted by a mental health clinician or therapist or whatever, but it's pretty clear. If somebody can only talk about themselves, what they're doing, what they're accomplishing, you know, how important, interesting, and how much of a star they are, that's clear as day. Something that we can all look at and be like, all right, this is very grandiose, very delusional, very just doing too much, right? This is where we start to be able to recognize how irrational some of these people will sound when they're describing themselves and what they can accomplish. So let's hear the last bit of this part, and then we'll move on to the next video.
With ourselves. In healthy doses, it's important. But defining the level of self-love and obsession is vital to figure out when someone in your life is toxic, and also when you might be toxic to someone else. Let's look at psychopathy now. Number 1, people often say I'm out of control. Number 2, I tend to fight against authorities and their rules. Number 3, I've been in more fights than most people of my age and gender. Number 4, I tend to dive in then ask questions later. Number 5, I've been in trouble with the law. Number 6, I sometimes get into dangerous situations. Number 7, people who mess with me always regret it. These all revolve around lacking empathy and showing aggression. If someone has all of these statements on a high scale, it can be extremely scary. The final 7 questions revolve around sadism. While this is not directly part of the Dark Triad, if someone scores high on the first 21 questions, or if you are unsure of where they fall, asking the final 7 will help you to further define whether and where they are on the Dark Triad spectrum, and how much they are hiding from you. If you are unfamiliar with the concept of sadism, the dictionary defines it as the tendency to derive pleasure, especially sexual gratification from inflicting pain, suffering, and humiliation of others. Of course, this is likely a lot easier to spot than psychopathy. The 7 statements are: Number 1, watching a fist fight excites me. Number 2, I really enjoy violent films and video games. Number 3, it's funny when idiots fall flat on their face. Number 4, I enjoy watching violent sports. Number 5, some people deserve to suffer. Number 6, just for kicks, I've said mean things on social media. Number 7, I know how to hurt someone with words alone. Realizing that someone close to you is hiding their true self and is exhibiting traits that point towards the Dark Triad can be scary and overwhelming. Getting out of that relationship can be difficult, but it's important to be aware and honest with yourself. There are other things you can look out for that indicate that someone is hiding something from you. Here are 3 more. Number 6, a gut feeling. A life coach gave the advice that a gut feeling is an internal mechanism that your body has gifted you with that something is not right. It is easy to push those feelings to the side and ignore them, especially if we are in love with someone. But it's important to trust your gut and listen to what your body and mind are telling us.
So this, I think it takes a lot more time in life to develop, right? A lot of us, we know what our gut feeling is. We understand what it's telling us, but a lot of times we'll let outside or secondary emotions basically drive how we view these particular things. And I think so instead of us blatantly ignoring red flags, it's more so that people will overlook things because of their feelings, right? So they'll be so overwhelmed with attraction to someone that they may overlook problematic, jealous, aggressive behavior, right? This is not necessarily somebody specifically being dumb. It's somebody being clouded, their judgment being clouded by other secondary feelings that they have. So every time, people get caught up with people like this, I don't say that they're dumb or they ignored the red flags. I say that their judgment was clouded. right? There was a sort of uncertainty that loomed, but that was all based only on their feelings. It wasn't based in fact. It wasn't based on anything that they could see or observe. It was just based in how they felt in a certain situation or moment. So that's what makes it tricky.
Number 7, you hear gossip. It doesn't always have to be a feeling either. The grapevine exists too. While it is easy to ignore the voice in your head, it can be equally easy to block out the voices and advice of those around us. While it is important to protect the ones we love, sometimes we deceive ourselves when others around us have bad stories and impressions of those we are trying to protect. Don't ignore the gossip and advice from friends who are able to view the person from an objective standpoint. They might know them even better than you do.
And this is the biggest one here. This is what a lot of us, unfortunately, will do, right? We'll hear what people say, what people think, and we'll believe that we somehow would have a different or a better, more clear perspective. When the people who are telling us the things, usually, they have a pretty good understanding of that person, right? They have no reason to think poorly just because, but they also have no reason to favor this person. So whatever it is that they're telling you, as long as it's coming from an objective place, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Pay attention to all the signs. If people come to you and they're like, listen, I know you think that person is cute, but they have a history of doing blase, blase, blase. Don't let love cloud those things. Pay attention to some of the gossip. As long as it's not outlandish and the sources are reliable, then make sure that you don't just tune that stuff out because you love somebody. Sometimes because you love somebody, you got to pay more attention. And this is even true with friends and family, people that we have deeper connections with. So let's finish off the last 30 seconds of this video, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Number 8, they get unusually quiet. Those with secrets like to keep them. Someone who is hiding their true self from you might have the habit of getting unusually quiet on topics they know you won't agree with them on. It's important to ask the difficult questions in any relationship and pay attention to the response. And if you liked this video, then check out these related videos to see more. And make sure to...
And that's a big one right there, right? If somebody isn't willing to even breach a topic with you because they just understand that you're not going to agree with their point of view. They know whatever their point of view is very erratic and sort of outlandish. And so what they'll do is they'll avoid topics. So if they know, for example, that you want to get married or that you want a serious relationship, they might avoid ever talking to you about where you guys stand with each other, whether you guys are in a exclusive. They'll avoid all those conversations because they don't want to breach the topic. All right, they don't care to try to help you feel better about whatever you're in with them. So let me play the next video. And I dropped the link just in case anyone was interested in coming up. But I know a lot of these subjects you guys just want to listen, pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out. Do whatever you want to do. But the link is there just in case anybody has anything to add. All right, let me play the video.
Welcome! So, if you've ever thought about being in a relationship with someone who has personality traits associated with the Dark Triad, you may want to use extreme caution and think twice before doing so. The Dark Triad refers to the trio of personality types that include Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Machiavellianism refers to people who emotionally distance themselves from others while manipulating them for the sole benefit of their own self-interests and have a complete disregard for them. Narcissism refers to those who have overinflated confidence in themselves while believing they are extremely important and superior to others. Although they may have an exaggerated love for themselves, they may also have a rather vulnerable or fragile self-image. Psychopathy refers to a variety of potentially harmful traits that can include a lack of concern, remorse, or guilt for others, emotional shallowness, impulsivity, and a lack of empathy for other people. When individuals with these dark traits seek out dating partners, beware of these patterns that they tend to exhibit. Narcissists may feel they deserve to have a variety of relationships rather than committing to one person. This sense of entitlement is because they only truly care about one person, themselves. Those who have traits of psychopathy and Machiavellianism tend to have a preference for a greater number of short-term sexual relationships, such as one-night stands or friends with benefits type situations, without any desire for a deeper emotional connection.
So that kind of said a word there about narcs, right? Now we sort of understand why women or men who are describing certain types of people who feel entitled to having a bunch of partners, who just want to run through people as narcissistic, right? Because they truly believe that they deserve to have all these different people and they don't really have to offer much, right? They might pretend like they're these big, bad, important people, but they know what they're expecting. They're not expecting to also give in return anything to those people of value. So they really just feel like they should be having these friends with benefits and these one night stands because they are them, because they're that guy or that girl or whatever it is. All of it is an inflation of self. It's not, it really is nothing. They really don't have anything to offer in this case. So beware.
In other words, they tend to avoid any type of commitment, and if they do enter into a relationship, know that infidelity is common. Someone with psychopathic or Machiavellianism tendencies may be charming enough at first to attract the prospective target, but with the sole devious purpose of manipulating or exploiting them to fulfill their own sexual desires. They may act impulsively and present as cold or impersonal towards their partner. More concerning is that they may have sadomasochistic fantasies and can act out violently. Those with psychopathic traits won't be showing any empathy towards the person they're with. Rather, they may actually enjoy the pain and suffering they inflict on others. If you are someone who'd rather avoid the Dark Triad, then please press the like button. Each like helps YouTube bring more viewers to the channel and help warn them about.
Yep, so that's pretty much that. I think they did a really good job of sort of breaking it down really quickly about how harmful these people are really to interact with. All right, so now the next concept that I sort of wanted to get into was attachment styles. And I don't want you guys to think that this is too far off from the general discussion that we're having here today. Let me show all of my notes and all that down there. I'm trying to get like a... Okay, yes. So we might not understand too much of excuse me. We might not, but prior to coming here, I don't know how much you guys all know about attachment styles and sort of how the people who raise you treat you and prepare you for relationships and other interpersonal interactions with people, right? So based on how present and available your parents were is going to determine how you move in relationships with people, whether it be friends or romantic relationships. So if you got the affirmation, the attention that you needed, then you probably have a secure attachment. And so you don't need a lot of reassurance and information and constant, like, you don't need the person to constantly tell you that they want to be with you, they love you. You don't need all of that. But if you did have some breaks in attachment, you basically weren't able to establish a healthy relationship with a parent, then this can all impact how your relationships move forward. So, of course, you guys know we're going to be listening to Dr. Ramani, as she talks to us about how attachment styles can actually, lead us to the hands of some very harmful people, including the narcissistic personality type in relationships. So let's see, Dr. Ramani. I'm going to be stopping it to give my commentary, but she does a great take on attachment styles, which will sort of explain why people who may otherwise be very rational, be very intelligent, intellectual, whatever, they might easily become swooped into relationships with people like this, a lot of the times due to secondary trauma that happened in childhood or insecure bonds that they had with their parents. All right, so all of these things play into how we relate to people as adults. So let's get into it. Dr. Ramani, the expert on narcissism.
This intensity may actually keep a person with a disorganized attachment style hooked. It becomes a confirmation, sadly, that relationships are unsafe and untrustworthy, and that confirmation can keep a person locked into a toxic cycle. Let's talk attachment styles. More and more people are exploring their attachment styles, and these attachment styles, which develop in childhood, can have implications for adult relationships. And your attachment style has bearing on how things may unfold, in particular in a narcissistic relationship. In this series, we will be taking on the 4 attachment styles: anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and secure, and talk about how these may show up in a narcissistic relationship. Now remember, this stuff about attachment styles, it's not a horoscope, right? You aren't stuck forever being an ambitious Capricorn. Healthy connections as your life goes on can shape your way of being in the world and your attachment. Research has also shown that our mental health in a present moment is a stronger predictor than other factors such as childhood attachment style for determining certain aspects of relationship health. Basically, how you're doing now.
All right, so it's actually refreshing to hear her say that regardless of what you've gone through, if you have your mental health check, you have your mental health in check presently, meaning you've dealt with your traumas, you've dealt with your attachment issues, you kind of learned to accept what it is that what you went through as a child and heal from it, then you still are able to not end up in these relationships. So it's not an indictment, but she's still going to break down attachment styles and how they can lead you into these narcissistic relationships.
Is more important than the stuff that might have happened in the past. And even within a family, you may have a very secure attachment with one parent and an insecure attachment style with another. One of those attachment styles may predominate, especially if that secure attachment was with a more present parent, and you still may go on to secure attachments in adulthood. None of this is dooming you, okay? But let's start at the top with the anxious attachment style. People with anxious attachment styles are folks that can feel insecure and pretty much on their back foot in close relationships. There is an asymmetry when an anxiously attached person enters any relationship, but definitely in a narcissistic relationship, because the anxiously attached person will devalue or undervalue themselves and overvalue the narcissistic person. And since the narcissistic person is already devaluing the anxiously attached person, that's a lot of devaluing for that person. In relationships, people who are anxiously attached often seek a lot of reassurance. They wait for the approval and for the validation of the other person. Again, this is a terrible position to be in a narcissistic relationship, since that validation faucet is only running one way and it isn't towards you. And because anxiously attached people often do need reassurance to feel not only safe, but to stave off that fear of abandonment, narcissistic relationships can be brutal for people with this attachment style. This need for reassurance may extend, for example, to seeking out reassurance when you are separated from them. Like, for example, one of you is going on a trip and one of you is not. And first of all, let's face it, narcissistic people tend to have a propensity for poor boundaries and may be shady, especially when they're away. So all of this, just the very act of separation and the shadiness on top of that, can make separations and distance really difficult for anxiously attached people who not only find separations to be devastating, then they really, really, really miss the person. Now here is where it gets even more difficult. Many narcissistic people, especially vulnerable narcissistic people, also have anxiously attached styles. So that means that the vulnerable narcissistic person may be grappling for reassurance and approval and validation, but have little to offer and return. And the valuation dynamic will get overpowered. The narcissism may overpower the attachment style, and what we may see is that the vulnerable, anxiously attached narcissistic person is sort of feeling like a victim but also undervaluing the other person, but also living in fear of being abandoned by the other person. So you can see how these relationships can get so twisted and contentious. Anxiously attached styles are come out of a combination of high anxiety but low avoidance. This is an attachment style that's also called the preoccupied attachment style, meaning that there's anxiety and fear around attachment and separation, and lots of rumination about these relationships. The anxiously attached person is often thinking about the other person in the relationship when they're not with them. And yet, anxiously attached people do.
So, as you can see there, a person with this attachment style deficiency, for lack of a better way for saying, or somebody who just has issues with their attachment, right? They might be anxious attached, or the one that we spoke of before this. Their energy and how they're presenting is sort of bouncing off the narc, right? Because the narc is also anxiously attached. They also have that distress within them where, they're also worried about being validated, if they're valued, if they're beneficial to the partner, if the partner, is even attracted to that. They're going through that same struggle. So it really becomes distressing for both of them. They're both just sort of panicking. So you can see why they're attracted to each other, because they have a lot of similarities, but they also don't provide each other any relief for the anxiety that they feel. They just sort of understand each other.
Rather regularly find themselves in relationships with narcissistic people. Who knows? Maybe because these relationships resembled at least one early childhood relationship in which attachment seeking was insecure at best. Now, anxious attachments, again, come out of early relationships characterized by inconsistency, caregiver.
So that's pretty much unfortunate right there. Basically saying that these people that you become anxiously attached to, who are narcissistic, who have that same anxious attachment, are attractive to you because they mimic the poor, inconsistent relationships that you had as a child, right? So you're literally acting out and feeling out things based off of your experiences in childhood. It doesn't matter how old you are, you'll still be shaped by it, unfortunately. So that's why it's really important to heal any, like, don't be sad that you had an anxious attachment. Be sad that you can't let that go and learn to have healthier relationships, right? Be focused on that versus the fact that you had this negative childhood memory, because that stuff can be evolved. But if you don't evolve from it, this is what you can attract in your personal life, right? You can end up basically repeating the cycle for yourself.
Unavailability, just sort of caregivers that are in and out. Parents that create anxious attachments create environments that are actually quite similar to narcissistic relationships, attuned at some times, misattuned at many others, and the child is left anxious and not safe in the assurance that they can beckon and call forth the caregiver when they need them. And the other narcissistic vibe that creates these anxious attachments is that parents that foster anxious attachments are those who look to the child for their own needs, for the parent's need to be validated. These are parents who may be intrusive and in terms of have really lousy boundaries, and the child simply becomes a source of narcissistic supply. These parents may overparent when they believe it's going to get them the validation or the result that they want. It's not unusual for anxiously attached children to come from families where the children are only interesting when they make the parents look good. And in this way, we can see how the intergenerational cycles of narcissistic parenting can foster anxious attachments that may create all kinds of relationship challenges for the next generation. The devaluation that anxiously attached people sort of push towards themselves is what makes this style most treacherous in narcissistic relationships, because people with this style are already so self-disparaging that when the narcissistic person participates in the devaluation, the anxiously attached person may become reinforced in the sense that it is true, and the fears of separation and abandonment may mean that the person will fall into deeply entrenched, trauma-bonded cycles of justification and rationalization and self-blame. This group of anxiously attached folks suffer quite a bit in narcissistic relationships. And for anxiously attached folks, having consistent, loving, and accessible supports in adulthood is crucial. Basically, the opposite of a narcissistic relationship. So for those of you out there who have taken the tests and found out that you have an anxious attachment style and you've had a narcissistic relationship, you know it was a wild ride and frankly a very unhealthy one. This is a particularly bad style in terms of the harm it brings to the person, the anxiously attached person in these relationships, because the very dynamics are all being constantly played on, creating greater and greater sense of fear and anxiety in these relationships. We're going to talk about the avoidant attachment style. This is an attachment style that has also been called the dismissive style. We call it the avoidant/dismissive style. These are sort of those psychological solo travelers.
So we talked about avoidant personality disorder, right? They're characterized by a fear of embarrassment, ostracization, their fear that they won't be accepted or liked, right? And so because of that, they will completely avoid social interactions. They'll avoid social contact, social situations, anything where they're going to be forced to interact with people, they're going to avoid it. So when she says a social, like a social, it's not social, a solo traveler, like an emotional solo traveler, we're talking about people who will completely isolate themselves for fear of not being accepted or liked. That's their way of dealing with uncertainty when it comes to how people will feel about them or the attachment that they'll have to people. They're very dismissive and distant. So let's continue to hear this one as well.
Very independent, and they can actually be quite emotionally cut off too. They don't ask for much emotionally, and in turn they don't offer much emotionally. And when they are faced up with emotion in a relationship, a partner, for example, showing emotion to them, their tendency is to pull away. The avoidant/dismissive attached folks, these are folks who will not come to a relationship with deep intimacy needs or emotional needs, and like I said, in parallel to that, will not have much to offer to any show of emotion, and in fact are quite put off by it. Because they're so independent and somewhat emotionally detached, it can kind of appear as though they simply do not need relationships, and things like abandonment stuff is really not an issue for them. They're the kind of folks who aren't going to miss you when you're away from them and you're in a relationship with them. And honestly, if there was ever a style that I think could work well in a narcissistic relationship, it might be this one. And don't get me wrong, there can still be lots of fireworks. Because interestingly, narcissistic people do not do well with abandonment. So if a person with this attachment style can't be bothered and then steps back, it can result in volatility within a relationship with a narcissistic person. But the tendency of the avoidant, dismissive person to not expect emotional needs to be a thing in a relationship, and that sort of fierce independence in terms of relationships, it's almost a built-in hedge against the narcissistic distance that shows up in relationships. However, if the narcissistic person was reaching in and wanting more, the avoidant person may pull away and step away, and then a pretty toxic approach and avoidance stance may get initiated in the relationship. Not surprisingly, while the vulnerable narcissistic folks may be, as we already talked about, in that more anxious attached space, the grandiose and malignant narcissists may very well have more of this avoidant attachment style. So you can imagine, let's take it one way, if an avoidant and dismissive narcissist and then an anxiously attached person got into a relationship, how that can become very messy and very cruel very quickly. The contempt and dismissiveness you might see from the avoidant narcissistic person for emotion, for the needs of the other person, and that fierce emotional independence. Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm sure you're hearing this and saying, well, that sounds like a narcissist. But the fact is that not all people with dismissive, avoidant attachments are narcissistic. It's not the case at all. Now, you may wonder what kind of parenting style leads to the dismissive avoidant attachment style. It tends to originate with parents who are sort of cold and detached from the child's emotional states. They may very well pull away when the child is asking for nurturance or reassurance or closeness. The caregivers do not necessarily neglect the child in general. They're actually probably physically present. And that might even feel a little worse. And sadly, the more the child reaches in to the child for needs and wants and emotion, the more that the caregiver is likely to withdraw. And these avoidant parents also likely don't show much emotion either. It isn't that sort of in and out quality with the anxious parent, but rather the physically present, emotionally absent parent. That's what leads to the avoidant sort of attachment style. These are parents who shut down any shows of emotion and may label them as weak or excessive or unnecessary in their child. Now, people may get to an avoidant attachment style because their emotional needs were once not met, and they are not willing to take the bet that they will be met, so closing up and cutting out of the emotional element of a relationship sort of feels safer. This is a style, the avoidant / dismissive style, is characterized by low anxiety and high avoidance. The separation and abandonment anxiety we might see, for example, in someone who's anxiously attached is not present. And in the face of emotion, these people will retreat. They have this avoidant attachment style. If anything, with this attachment style, with this avoidant attachment style, these are the folks that may walk away from a narcissistic relationship because they may very well find that the neediness, the fragility, and the reassurance seeking, especially of a vulnerable narcissist, may be too much. And again, this avoidant attachment style in a narcissistic relationship can be tricky. Because one thing we do know about narcissistic people is that they can be very rejection sensitive. And because of that rejection sensitivity, that if they get into a relationship with someone who's more avoidant, who simply just does not like what's being asked of in the relationship or just simply wants to do their own thing, it'll be a lot easier for that avoidant person to detach, which for that rejection sensitive narcissistic person who also needs to stay in control can really froth up a tremendous amount of volatility. So there are all kinds of attachment tests out there on the internet. There's different ones. I know there's some that I particularly like. We could drop those in the video notes. And I think that the websites that they out there's some of them are actually quite good, run by academics who know a lot about this. But the fact of the matter is that understanding your attachment style can also give you a bit of a roadmap for some of the unique kind of potholes that you will fall into in the road called a narcissistic relationship. Now, this is a very difficult style to bring into a narcissistic relationship. It's a style characterized by high avoidance and high anxiety, both. This is the attachment style where we see both the avoidant and anxious attachment styles come together. It's an attachment style where we see lots of difficulties and challenges with trust in any relationship. And so there might be for people with disorganized attachment styles
and that's what makes this one so much, this disorganized one so much more difficult, right? And all these attachment styles at the end of the day, because these people often will think that they are protecting themselves, that they're doing the smarter thing by, just being closed off or just sort of bouncing between, the anxious, like she said, and the avoidance. So like being there and then not being there, caring, then not caring, right? They think that somehow that's a way to protect themselves, but really those type of relationships are more common to come between them and somebody narcissistic who's going to abuse them, or even just, not value the relationship that they're in with them. So it's very important to heal a lot of these different attachment styles that you have, or you will find yourself, unfortunately, being vulnerable with somebody who doesn't deserve it, right? Or being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't necessarily have the same intentions or intent for it as you do. So, a lot of the times people think that they're doing something, that they're building a wall or a shell when they have these attachment styles or these issues with attachment where they're bouncing in and out, they're cold, hot, cold, hot. What they're really doing is setting themselves up for failure. in these relationships, right? They're setting themselves up for ending up with people who are more manipulative, who also have these attachment issues and might complicate the relationship, or who also have negative attributes or just a negative attribute in general to bring into a relationship with you. Heal those attachment issues that you're having, and that's a surefire way to avoid narcs and other people with personality disorders in relationships. But let's listen to more of what Dr. Romney has to say.
Their relationships, there might be intense periods of closeness, and then the person with a disorganized relationship style will pull away when things feel uncomfortable, and then intensely recouple, perhaps if there is a period of hoovering or coming together. As a result, this means that when a person with a disorganized, fearful attachment style is in a relationship with a narcissistic person, it can be very volatile. The very nature of narcissistic relationships, where there is idealization mixed with invalidation, sometimes mixed with detachment, can mean that that kind of relationship landscape for a person with a disorganized, fearful attachment style can feel like terror and chaos. Dysregulation is a common theme in people with disorganized/fearful attachment styles, and it can be difficult for people with these attachment styles to manage their emotions, which means there can be strong shows of anger, despair, depression. In any relationship, this kind of emotional dysregulation will be confusing and chaotic at times. But in a narcissistic relationship, the emotional dysregulation will come up against the dysregulation that we see in narcissistic people, right? So you got it on both sides. And this is really problematic, especially when the narcissistic person is rageful or angry. And as you can imagine, people with
So I love Dr. Ramani because she really breaks it down for you so that you understand things even in context of regular relationships. So what she's talking about there with that fearful whatever, I forget the other name for it, attachment there, is that both of the people are just they're experiencing so much distress from their emotions, right? They're very worked up. And the narcissist is naturally chaotic, right? They're naturally suffering with those same issues that somebody with that attachment style would have. So it makes this very problematic and difficult and dangerous. Like she said, they might both be blowing up on each other, right? Because that's just how they do things. They have those strong, powerful emotions that just burst out of them, and so these can be pretty violent couple relationships that are just sort of full of they're too both showing their strong, powerful emotions. It's better to not be in a relationship than to be with one like this, because they're really not, again, they're not providing each other any relief. They might have a connection and attraction to each other, but when shit hits the fan, they're basically dangerous to each other because of the way they express and emote. So let's continue. Oops. Why is my mouse moving like this?
disorganized/fearful attachment styles may also struggle with abandonment. So when that's coupled, that kind of relationship style and the dysregulation is coupled with the abandonment fears we also see in narcissistic people, once again highlights the volatility that often arises for a person with a disorganized, fearful attachment style who is in a narcissistic relationship. Now, the struggle is that people with disorganized/fearful attachment styles do want relationships, but have such a difficult time with trust, are terribly afraid of rejection, and may get really invested in self-protection by not letting a partner to get close, but also experiencing despair and strong emotion when a partner wants to end a relationship. There's a constant tension for people with disorganized attachment styles, because in this style, this attachment style means it's sort of you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop in a relationship. And there's a constant anticipation that the other person in the relationship is going to leave. So for a person with a disorganized attachment, it's almost like a constant wait for the inevitable abandonment that is coming. And this can also mean that a person with a disorganized attachment style may sort of preemptively end a relationship before the other person can end it first. In a narcissistic relationship, you can see how this style would fuel this volatility, because for narcissistic folks, especially a narcissistic person with an anxious attachment, abandonment can result in rage and manipulation. And again, this perception of a partner as unpredictable or inconsistent is actually borne out if the disorganized attachment person is in a relationship with a narcissistic person. So the cycle of the narcissistic relationship that goes from idealization to devaluation is psychologically horrifying for a person with a disorganized and fearful attachment style. These relationship cycles of when you have a person with a disorganized attachment style who gets into a relationship with someone with a narcissistic personality style means that we see a roller coaster of highs and lows. And the trauma bonded patterns in these relationships may be more intense. This intensity may actually keep a person with a disorganized attachment style hooked. It becomes a confirmation, sadly, that relationships are unsafe and untrustworthy, and that confirmation can keep a person locked into a toxic cycle. The disorganized attachment style is often born out of a history of childhood abuse. A child either being a direct recipient of abuse or the child witnessing a caregiver being abused. Whatever that sort of the trauma and the chaos the child grew up with, it sets up a cycle of fearful attachments from a childhood, with a child never knowing how to get their needs met or not knowing if their needs ever will be met. From a survival standpoint, the child is stuck in a constant state of fear and insecurity. And despite that natural drive to want to trust, the attempts to trust are often met with betrayal, and that leads to this attachment style. Now remember, there are two people in a relationship, and it is also possible that the narcissistic person themselves, if they also have a disorganized attachment style, it would then be a relationship with two fearfully disorganized attached persons in it, and one of them is narcissistic. And this is very much an environment of volatility, distrust, fear, abandonment, and major difficulties with ever being able to create any kind of consistent, intimate, and deep bond between partners. For people with disorganized attachments, because trauma is so often part of the origin of the disorganized attachment style, trauma-informed therapy is often essential to work on these issues. None of these attachment styles are an indictment. You're not stuck forever. But all of the attachment styles, the disorganized attachment style in a narcissistic relationship probably has the worst outcomes and may experience some of the worst fallout from narcissistic abuse. The disorganized attachment style, again, that early history of how much loss and invalidation there was, that incapacity to feel that there's any safe places to go. It's a difficult attachment style to bear up under. So to have that attachment style and the kind of insecurity and lack of safety it creates in the world, and then to enter into a relationship with somebody who has marginal empathy, a need for dominance, and is willing to manipulate, that manipulation, when a person with a disorganized attachment style who's already living in so much fear and sometimes confusion in these relationships, that kind of manipulation can really, really create so much distress. So this is a tough combination. Again, trauma-informed therapy, if a person has this attachment style, is essential and can really make a difference. Here's the last one we're going to talk about, the secure attachment style. I don't want to say I saved the best for last because I think that feels judgy. Let's just call this the last in the series about attachment styles and how they affect us in narcissistic relationships. Certainly having the secure attachment style is probably the nicest attachment style to have, but I think our attachment styles are attachment styles, and to say one is...
All right, so I'm pretty much going to end out there because, as we know, secure attachment is actually when you've had the proper bonds and affirmation from your parents to just, from a psychological standpoint and developmental standpoint, for you to develop regular self-esteem and go on to lead a healthy emotional life, right? So we don't have to get into that one too much, but I do want to do a part 2 of this conversation because I do want to talk about the impacts of dealing with these people in these dark triad personality groups, these people with dark triad traits. I would like to go into a little bit more of that. So I'm going to do a follow-up stream to this, a part 2, if you will. So look out for it. It is a little bit late in the night, so I'm going to call in the night. And I hope that you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. All right, let me, you know what am I do? How do I take this? Okay, stop sharing. All right, so I'm gonna play my music and then I will kick it, y'all.
Battles got power, Florabella stands tall. Every drip, every drop, watch the haters fall. Channel sharp as thorns, ain't taking no mess. Scroll through her feet, feel that queen's finesse. Vines tangle tight, but Flora breaks free. Roots so deep, can't mess with her tree. From the mud she rises, roses from the dirt. Every comment section she lays down hurt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. From the garden green to the concrete wall, Florabella, unstoppable nature's child. Leaves whisper secrets, she's the loudest shout. From the channel buzzing, she never backs out. Seed of strength, through season she grows. In the face of doubt, her spirit glows. Cameras ain't a limit, she branches out. Thorns in her crown, she wears it no doubt. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless. Flora's anthem, blooming under pressure. Resilient, resolving, no lesser. Florabella's reign strong and relentless. Beauty in battle, queen sure defenseless.
Florabella on my screen, her smile it shines so bright. She's a queen with every scene, in the morning or the night. Recipes and good vibes flow, every video a gem. Her confidence it grows and grows, we're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows, she's where we all belong. With every like and every share, we feel her energy. No storm too strong, she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Recipes and good vibes flow, every video a gem. Her confidence it grows and grows, we're inspired like her friends. Unstoppable Flora, she's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong. With every like and every share, we feel her energy. No storm too strong she can't bear. She's setting us all free. Unstoppable flora. She's got that power, spreading her aura, blossoming like a flower. Through the highs and all the lows, she remains so strong. Her spirit always glows. She's where we all belong.
All right, everybody, have a good night. I will catch you on the next one. Again, I'm going to do a part 2 to this show tonight and hopefully get some more people here to talk when there's not as much drama going on at night for those of you who would like to do so. All right, have a good night.